Anunnaki gods from another planet visited Earth 445,000 years ago in pursuit of gold. They landed with a splash in one of Earth's oceans and built Eridu, home in the far away. A full-fledged Mission Earth eventually emerged from the virtual community, complete with a mission control center, a spaceport, mining operations, and even a way station on Mars. The astronauts used genetic engineering to create primitive workers, Homo sapiens, since they were short on human resources. A new beginning was necessary after the cataclysmic deluge engulfed the planet. The astronauts took on the role of gods, giving humanity civilization and the ability to worship. Then, roughly 4,000 years ago, a nuclear catastrophe undid everything that had been accomplished. This was caused by visitors to Earth who were engaged in conflicts and wars. Ryan Moorhen drew information from the now famous Moorhen Collection Private Museum in Liechtenstein. It was once curated by his grandfather George Moorhen for the Rothschilds' curated artifacts comprising of the Bible, clay tablets, ancient mythologies, and archaeological finds about what had happened on Earth, particularly the events that had occurred since the beginning of human history. But what had occurred on the astronauts' home planet Nibiru before the events on Earth? What had led to space travel, the demand for gold, and the creation of man? What feelings, conflicts, convictions, and morals, or lack thereof, led the main characters in the heavenly and space sagas? What were the interactions between Nibiru and Earth that were tense? What conflicts erupted between the young and old, between those born on Earth and those who had traveled from Nibiru? And to what extent was what transpired predetermined by destiny? A destiny whose account of the past contains the secret to the future. Would it not be fortunate if one of the main characters, an eyewitness who could tell the difference between fate and destiny, recorded for posterity the how, where, when, and why of it all, possibly the first and last things? But some accomplished just that, and foremost among them was the commander of the first crew of Nephilim astronauts. The biblical stories of creation, Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden, the Deluge, and the Tower of Babel were based on writings made millennia earlier in Mesopotamia, particularly by the Anunnaki Sumerians, according to scholars and theologians. And they, in turn, made it evident that they had read the writings of the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, the ancient gods from which they had learned about historical events, many of which took place before civilization had even emerged. Many such early texts have been discovered due to archaeological discoveries made over the past 150 years in the ruins of ancient civilizations, particularly in the Near East. The discoveries have also revealed the extent of missing texts, or so-called lost books, which are either mentioned in the discovered texts or inferred from such texts or known to have existed because they were catalogued in royal or temple libraries. The Epic of Gilgamesh described the debate between the gods that resulted in the decision to let mankind perish in the deluge, and the text Atrahasis describes the revolt of the Anunnaki who had labored in the gold mines that resulted in the creation of primitive workers, earthlings. Both contain portions of what is sometimes referred to as the secrets of the gods. The leaders of the astronauts occasionally wrote compositions themselves. Sometimes they dictated the text to a selected scribe, as in the Era epoch, where one of the two gods who had brought about the nuclear catastrophe attempted to blame his rival. Other times, the god served as his scribe, as in the case of the Book of the Secrets of Thoth, the Egyptian god of knowledge, which the god had hidden in an underground chamber. The Bible claims that before giving the commandments to his chosen people, the Lord God Yahweh wrote them on 2 stone tablets he delivered to Moses on Mount Sinai. He recorded the words the Lord spoke to him while he was on the mount for 40 days and 40 nights. Moses had the new set of tablets written on them when he flung down and smashed the original set after the Golden Calf event. The Book of the Secrets of Thoth would not have been known if it weren't for a story about it preserved on papyrus from the reign of the Egyptian monarch Khufu, Cheops. We would never have known about the divine tablets and their contents. Everything would have been included in the mysterious body of lost writings, whose very existence would have never been discovered if it weren't for the biblical narratives in Exodus and Deuteronomy. At least 2 occasions suggested that the biblical narrator was aware of prior works. The fact that, in some instances, we are aware that some messages exist but are unaware of their contents is no less terrible. The Bible explicitly references the Book of Dasher, also known as the Book of Righteousness, and the Book of the Wars of Yahweh. This is the book of the generations of Adam, says the first line of Genesis chapter 5. Toledoth, typically translated as generations, means historic or genealogical record. The second time is in Genesis 6:1, where the phrase, "These are the Toledot of Noah," is used to introduce the story of Noah and the deluge. In addition, the Book of Enoch, one of the so-called apocryphal books that were not included in the canonized Bible, contains passages that scholars believe to be fragments from a much earlier book of Noah. In fact, partial versions of a book that became known as the Book of Adam and Eve have survived over the millennia in Armenian, Slavonic, Syriac, and Ethiopic languages. The famed Library of Alexandria in Egypt is a frequently cited illustration of the magnitude of lost books. In conflicts from 48 BC to the Arab conquest of AD 642, this beautiful library, where intellectuals met to examine the body of knowledge, was destroyed. After Alexander's demise in 323 BC, General Ptolemy built a library with more than 500,000 volumes of literature engraved on diverse materials: clay, stone, papyrus, and parchment. The first 5 volumes of the Hebrew Bible translated into Greek are all that is left of its richness. In addition, several of the library's resident scholars' papers still contain fragments. Only via this do we know that in 270 BC, the Greeks gave the Egyptian priest Manetho a commission to chronicle Egypt's history and prehistory. Then it was the demigods, and ultimately, around 3100 BC, the Pharaonic dynasty started. He said that the divine reigns lasted for thousands of years after the flood, during which time there were wars and battles between the gods, and that they had started 10,000 years before the flood. Similar attempts were made to give the Greek savants a record of past events in Alexander's Asian territories, where their rule was transferred to General Seleucid and his successors. The history of gods and men was chronicled in 3 volumes by Berosus, a priest of the Babylonian god Marduk, who had access to clay tablet libraries, the most important of which was the Temple Library of Haran, now in southeast Turkey. This history began 432,000 years before the deluge, when the gods descended to earth from the heavens. Berosus stated that the first ruler came ashore from the sea disguised as a fish, listing the names and reign lengths of the first 10 leaders. He was the one who endowed humanity with civilization, and his name was Canis when translated into Greek. Both priests thus gave tales of gods of heaven who had come to earth, of a time when only gods ruled on earth, and of the devastating deluge, alluding to each other in numerous aspects. Berosus specifically reported the existence of writings from before the Great Flood, stone tablets that were hidden for safekeeping in an ancient city called Sippar, one of the original cities founded by the ancient gods, in the fragmentary bits and pieces retained in other contemporary writings from the 3 volumes. Sippar, like other pre-diluvial towns of the gods, was overrun and destroyed by the deluge, 668 to 633 BC. A library containing the remnants of some 25,000 inscribed clay tablets was unearthed in the palace's ruins when archaeologists discovered Nineveh in the middle of the 19th century. This ancient Assyrian metropolis had previously only been known from the Old Testament. A mention of the pre-diluvial texts appeared in the chronicles of the Assyrian monarch Ashurbanipal. Ashurbanipal, who was a devoted collector of olden texts, boasts in his annals, "The god of scribes has bestowed on me the gift of the knowledge of his art. I have been initiated into the secrets of writing. I can even read the intricate tablets in Anunnaki Sumerian. I understand the enigmatic words in the stone carvings from the days before the flood." The Anunnaki Sumerian civilization, which later gave way to the Indus Valley civilization in the Indian subcontinent, is known to have flourished in Iraq almost a millennium before the beginning of the Pharaonic Age in Egypt. It is now known that the Anunnaki Sumerians were the first to record the histories and legends of deities and humans. From them, all other peoples, including the Hebrews, got the stories of creation, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, the deluge, the Tower of Babel, and the wars and loves of the gods, which are depicted in the writings and memories of the Greeks, Hittites, Canaanites, Persians, and Indo-Europeans. These ancient manuscripts reveal that far older texts, some discovered, many lost, were their sources. The amount of these ancient texts is astounding. Amid the ruins of the ancient Near East, tens of thousands of clay tablets have been found, not thousands. Numerous transactions involve or document daily life elements such as marriage contracts and workers' wages. Other canonized texts or secret literature were written down in the Anunnaki Sumerian language and then translated to Akkadian, the first Semitic language, and other ancient languages. These texts, primarily found in palace libraries, make up the royal annals. Still, other texts discovered in the ruins of temple libraries or scribal schools make up a group of canonized texts. Additionally, references to missing books can be found in those earliest writings dating back almost 6,000 years, texts inscribed on stone tablets. The same information concerning the 10 pre-diluvial kings and their 432,000-year cumulative reign that Berosus had mentioned is etched on clay prisms, which are among the incredible to say. Luckily does not communicate the miracle findings in the remains of ancient towns and their libraries. There is no question that the Anunnaki Sumerian compilers of the Anunnaki Sumerian king lists, which are on display in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, England, had access to some previous common or canonical textual material. They strongly imply that the original recorder of the arrival, as well as of prior events and subsequent events, had to be one of those leaders, a key participant, or an eyewitness when combined with other equally early manuscripts found in varying levels of preservation. The leader who had splashed down with the first batch of astronauts had been a participant in all those activities and an eyewitness to them. His nickname at the time was EA, which stands for He Whose Home is Water. He was disappointed when his half-brother and opponent, Enlil, Lord of the Command, was awarded control of the Earth mission, and his humiliation was only slightly lessened by being given the title Enki, Lord of Earth. Enki, a renowned scientist, discovered the hominids who lived there after being banished from the god cities and spaceport in the Eden, to oversee the gold mining in the Abzu, Southeast Africa. As a result, when the Anunnaki laboring in the gold mines rebelled and said no more, he was the one who realized that the necessary human resources could be obtained by accelerating evolution through genetic engineering. As a result, the Adam, literally he of the earth, an earthling, was created. The events mirrored in the biblical story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden described the second genetic modification by Enki that added the extra chromosomal genes required for sexual conception. Because Adam was a hybrid, he was unable to have children. It was he, Enki, who disobeyed his brother Enlil's intention to let mankind perish in the deluge. The events whose hero has been referred to as Noah in the Bible and Ziusudra in the earlier original Anunnaki Sumerian text, when mankind, proliferating, did not turn out as it had been planned. Enki, Nibiru's ruler and the firstborn son of Anu, was well versed in the history of his planet and its inhabitants. He was a gifted scientist who left the most essential components of the sophisticated Anunnaki knowledge, particularly to his two sons Marduk and Ningishzida, who, as Egyptian gods, were known there as Ra and Thoth respectively. But he also played a crucial role in transferring some of this cutting-edge knowledge to mankind by imparting the secrets of the gods to a few chosen individuals. Such initiates recorded those divine lessons as part of humankind's inheritance in at least 2 cases, as they were told to do. One of the earliest lost writings is believed to have been written by Adapa, who is thought to be the son of Enki by a human woman. Writings regarding time is one of his known works. The other, known as Enmeduranki, was most likely the forerunner of the biblical Enoch, who was carried up to heaven after giving his sons the Book of Divine Secrets, a version that may have survived in the extra-biblical Book of Enoch. Despite being Anu's firstborn, he was not meant to succeed his father as ruler of Nibiru. Enlil, Enki's half-brother, received that honor thanks to complicated succession procedures representing the complicated history of the Nibiruans. Enki and Enlil were sent to Earth to stop the acrimonious dispute, because Earth's gold may be used to make a barrier to protect Nibiru's vanishing atmosphere. Enki decided to reject Enlil's plan for mankind to perish in the deluge against this backdrop, which was made even more complicated by the presence of their half-sister Ninhursag, the chief medical officer of the Anunnaki on Earth. The fight persisted between the two half-brothers' kids and even their grandchildren. The fact that everyone involved, especially those who were born on Earth, had to deal with Nibiru's longer orbital periods' reduction in longevity contributed to their personal suffering and sharpened their goals. Everything reached a head in the last century of the 3rd millennium BC, when Ninurta, Enlil's firstborn son, and not Marduk, Enki's firstborn by his official bride, asserted that he should inherit the earth. The employment of nuclear weapons due to the brutal fight that included numerous conflicts unexpectedly destroyed the Anunnaki Sumerian civilization. The commencement of the priesthood, the lineages of the intermediaries between the gods and the people, the communicators of the divine words to the mortal earthlings, had been marked by the initiation of selected persons into the secrets of the gods. Oracles' interpretation of divine words coexisted with the practice of looking to the stars for signs, and prophecy started to come into play as mankind was drawn to join sides in religious disputes. Nabu, Marduk's firstborn son, strove to persuade mankind on behalf of his exiled father that the heavenly signals indicated the coming supremacy of Marduk, and the term to describe such speakers of the gods who proclaimed what was to come was Nabi. These advances made the realization that one must distinguish between fate and destiny more acute. Enki and Enlil started to reflect philosophically on what was truly fated and could not have been avoided, and what was fated as a result of good or bad choices and free will. Enki and Enlil sometimes reviewed and remembered the sequence of events and the apparent parallelism between what had happened on Nibiru and what had happened on Earth. The differences between Nam, a destiny like the planetary orbits whose course had been established and was immutable, and Anu, which were previously unquestioned, were now closely examined. Ta, which stood for fate, literally meant a destiny that could be bent, broken, or altered. The former could be predicted, whereas the latter could not, especially if everything was cyclical like planetary orbits. If what was will again be, if the first things will also be the last. The culmination of the nuclear apocalypse forced the Anunnaki leaders to examine their motives, and it heightened the need to explain why it happened in this way to the engulfing human masses. Is someone responsible for this? Was it predetermined or just a byproduct of Anunnaki's will? Was anyone accountable? On the eve of the catastrophe, Enki was the lone opponent of using the illegal weapon in the councils of the Anunnaki. Enki felt it was imperative to inform the suffering survivors of the significance of the turning point in the story of aliens who had good intentions but ended up being destroyers. And who better than Ea Enki, who arrived first and was an eyewitness, to tell the past so that the future could be predicted. Since a lengthy collection covering at least 22 tablets in the Morhen collection was found in the ancient library in Mosul, Enki documented his autobiography. Enki is quoted as saying by Nippur, "There was a great deal of flooding when I got closer to Earth. As I got closer to its lush meadows, at my direction, heaps and mounds were built up. I constructed my home in a purity spot, giving it a suitable moniker." The lengthy passage tells how Enki gave his lieutenants tasks to complete, sending them on a trip to Earth. Enki's story is completed by several additional books. Some are partly in the Morhen collection in Liechtenstein, and the other half in Switzerland, also in a private museum. They include a cosmogony and an epic of creation, both of which contain Enki's own writings, known to researchers as the Eridu Genesis, and which relate various aspects of his participation in later developments. They go into great depth on how Adam was created. They include texts of Enki's personal life and problems, such as the tale of his attempts to have a son by his half-sister Ninhursag, his promiscuity with both goddesses and the daughters of man, and the unintended consequences thereof. They describe how other Anunnaki, male and female, came to Enki in his city Eridu to obtain the Me, a data disk from him that encoded all aspects of civilization. The division of Earth's kingdoms between Enki and Enlil by Anu averted a flare-up of their feuds, as noted in the Atrahasis narrative. The discussions in the Council of the Gods about the fate of humanity and Enki's deception, which is known as the story of Noah and the Ark, are almost verbatim in texts documenting the events before the deluge. Until one of its original Mesopotamian versions was discovered in the tablets of the Epic of Gilgamesh, this story was only known from the Bible. The main body of recorded memories of the events of gods and mortals can be found in Anunnaki Sumerian and Akkadian clay tablets, Babylonian and Assyrian temple libraries, Egyptian, Hittite, and Canaanite myths, and biblical tales. For the first time, Ryan Morhen has brought together and exploited this scattered and dispersed data to reconstruct Enki's eyewitness account. The autobiographical memoirs and incisive forecasts of an extraterrestrial god. Even though Ryan Morhen's grandfather was an Assyriologist who curated the collection of which it is named, and he has also studied Near Eastern history for almost 33 years, it took him 7 years to gain access to the collection with special permission from the Rothschilds. It reminds me of Yahweh's instructions to the prophet Isaiah, 7th century BC, which are presented as a text delivered by Enki to a chosen scribe, a book of witnessing to be unsealed at a suitable time. Come now, write it as a book on a sealed tablet, carve it, let it be a testimony for all time, witnessing to the very end. Isaiah 30:8. Enki himself saw the future while he dealt with the past. that the Anunnaki who possessed free will were in control of their own fates, as well as the fate of humanity, gave way to the understanding that destiny ultimately determined how events would turn out, and as a result, as the Hebrew prophets had foretold, the first thing shall be the last. Thus, the Enki recorded timeline serves as the basis for prophecy, and the past becomes the future. Brilliant scribe born in Eridu city who served the great god Enki. I was called by my master, the Lord Enki, the great god, the merciful creator of people, who created them in the 7th year following the great calamity, on the 17th day of the 2nd month. I was one of Eridu's surviving members, who fled to the dry steppe as the evil wind approached the city. I then set foot in the wilderness, searching for dead branches to use as firewood. I then turned to look above, and a whirlwind came from the south. It was silent and had a reddish glow about it. 4 straight feet extended out from its abdomen as it descended to the ground, and the brightness vanished. I immediately fell to the ground and bowed down, because I knew it was a divine vision. When I opened my eyes, I saw 2 divine emissaries standing close by. They too had human faces, and their clothes sparkled like burnished brass. They said, "You are being called by the mighty deity Enki," as they addressed me by name. "Do not be alarmed, you are blessed, and we are coming to transfer you to his retreat in the land of Mogon, on the island in the middle of the river of Mogon where the sluices are, by lifting you into the air." The whirlwind rose as a fiery chariot and left as they finished speaking. They each grasped one of my hands while holding onto me by the other. They immediately transported me between the earth and the heavens like an eagle as they lifted me. The countryside, rivers, plains, and mountains were all visible to me. They then dropped me off on the island near the entrance to the home of the giant god, and as soon as they released their grip, I was overcome with a brilliance I had never seen before, collapsing to the ground as though bereft of the spirit of life. I felt as though I had been roused from the deepest sleep by the sound of my name being called. I added, "Here I am." I was enclosed. Despite the darkness, an aura was present. Then the darkest of voices called my name once more. Even though I could hear it, I could not identify who was speaking or where the voice was coming from. The voice then addressed me, saying, "Endubsar, descendant of Adapa, I have appointed you to be my scribe, that you record my words on the tablets." A light suddenly materialized in one area of the enclosure. A scribe's table, a scribe's stool, and beautifully formed stones were on the table, and the area was set up like a scribal workspace. However, I didn't see any clay tablets or pots with wet clay. Only one stylus was on the table, and it shone in the light like no other reed stylus ever had. "Endubsar, son of Eridu city, my faithful servant," the voice said once more, "I am your lord Enki, and I have asked you to record my words because I am deeply saddened by what the great calamity has brought upon humanity. To prove to gods and mortals that my hands are pure, I want to document the events precisely as they happened. Such a catastrophe had not befallen the earth, the gods, and the inhabitants since the Great Deluge. But the Great Deluge, not the Great Calamity, would occur. This one would have been avoided 7 years ago. It could have been avoided. Although I, Enki, did everything I could to stop it, I was unsuccessful. Furthermore, was it fate or destiny? It will be judged, since there will be a day of judgment at the end of time. It will be the day of the re-entering celestial god when the earth will tremble, the rivers will shift their courses, and there will be darkness at noon and a fire in the heavens at night. On that day, it will be revealed who will survive and who will perish, who will be rewarded and who will be punished, gods and humans alike. For what will come to pass by what had passed shall be determined. and what was destined shall in a cycle be repeated. And what was destined and only by the hearts will occur for good or ill shall be for judgment come. The great Lord then resumed speaking, stating, I will reveal the correct narrative of the beginnings and of the prior times and of the olden times, for in the past the future lies hidden. The voice suddenly went silent. I will talk for 40 days and 40 nights, and you will write during that time. 40 will be the total of those days and nights, since 40 is my sacred number among the gods. You must fast for 40 days and 40 nights, and consume bread and water once, which will be enough to keep you alive for the duration of your assignment. A glowing appeared in another area of the enclosure as the voice paused. I then noticed a table with a plate and a cup on it. I got up and saw the bread and the cup of water on the plate. Endubsar, eat the bread and drink the water, and you will be maintained for 40 days and 40 nights, the great Lord Enki's voice echoed. And I followed the instructions. The light at the scribal table became more intense as the voice told me to sit there. I couldn't see any doors or openings where I was, yet the glowing was as bright as the midday sun. The voice asked, What do Endubsar the scribe? I then stated, I see stone tablets, and their color is blue as pure as the sky, as I looked at the blazing beam on the table, the stones and the stylus. Then I noticed a stylus I had never seen before, with a reed-like stem and an eagle talon-like tip. Stay true to what I've said and spoken, the voice said. These are the tablets on which you should write my words. They were cut to my specifications from the best lapis lazuli, each having 2 smooth faces. Each stone tablet must have its front face inscribed, and its back must have 2 writing columns. The stylus you can see was also created by a god. It has a divine crystal tip and an electrum handle. It will snugly fit in your hand, and engraving with it will be as simple as marking wet clay. There was a pause, and I touched one stone. The surface felt soft and smooth, like smooth skin. I then took the holy stylus, which was as light as a feather. The great deity Enki then spoke, and I recorded his words verbatim in my writing. His voice was booming, occasionally approaching a whisper. His voice conveyed grief or agony as much as pride or joy. I took another tablet to continue after one had been written on all of its faces. The giant god paused when the ultimate words were pronounced, and I heard a loud sigh, and he said, Endubsar, my servant, you have faithfully recorded my words for 40 days and 40 nights. This is where your job is done. Now take hold of a second tablet and write your attestation. As a witness, seal the tablet at the end. Take the tablet and place it with the other tablets in the divine chest. The chosen ones will arrive at a predetermined time and discover the chest and the tablets. They will then learn everything I have dictated to you and an accurate account of the beginnings, the prior times, the olden times, and the ages. And it will be both a witness to the past and a foreteller of the future. For the first thing is also the last, and the future lives in the past. After a brief pause, I placed the tablets inside the chest correctly. The chest outside was covered in gold inlay and constructed from acacia wood. My lord then spoke, telling me to fasten the chest's latch and close the cover, and I followed the instructions. After another silence, my lord Enki said, And as for you, Endubsar, you have spoken with a great deity, and even though you haven't seen me, you have been in my presence. You are therefore my chosen spokesperson for the people you will become, and I bless you. You must exhort them to do what is right, since a good and long life is found in doing so. And it would be best if you consoled them, because in 70 years the towns will be restored and the crops will resprout. Warfare will coexist with times of calm, Kingdoms will rise and fall, and new nations will grow powerful. The ancient gods will retire, and the future will be decided by new gods. However, destiny will win out in the end, and my remarks about the past foretell that future. Endubzar, you must inform the populace of all of it." After that, there was stillness, and as I, Endubzar, knelt in prayer, I questioned how I would know what to say. "The words to speak will come to you in dreams and visions," the Lord Enki said. "The signs will be in the heavens. There will be more prophets who have been chosen after you, and in the end, there will be no need for prophets because there will be a new earth and a new heaven." After the auras disappeared and there was silence, the ghost left me, and I was on the plains outside of Eridu when I came to my senses. Summary of the Morhen Collection Akkadian Tablet, MC2894A. Bewailing the emptiness of Sumer. What happened when the radioactive cloud expanded and the gods left their cities? The discussions held at the Gods' Council. The terrible choice to use weapons of terror. The beginnings of the gods and Nibiru's incredible armaments, North-South wars, union and dynastic rule on Nibiru, the location of Nibiru in the solar system. Climate changes brought on by a declining atmosphere. The attempt to get gold to protect the atmosphere fails. Alalu, a usurper, ignites volcanic gases with nuclear bombs. A dynastic successor named Anu overthrows Alalu. Alalu escapes Nibiru by stealing a spacecraft. Morhen Collection Akkadian Tablet MC2894A. The firstborn son of Anu, Lord Enki, who rules over Nibiru, spoke these words. "I cry laments with a heavy heart, and bitterly laments flood my heart. How devastated is the country? How has the evil wind taken its people? How have the stables and sheepfolds been emptied? How severely has the evil wind affected the cities, causing their inhabitants to pile up like dead bodies? How much has the evil wind affected the fields, leaving their greenery withered? How much are the rivers in love? The once pure, beautiful waters have been poisoned, and no one swims anymore. Sumer is empty of its black-headed inhabitants. All life has vanished. It is also empty of its cattle and lambs. The hum of milk churning has gone silent. Only the wind howls in its gorgeous cities. The only odor is death. The temples whose gods raised their heads to heaven have been forgotten. The scepter and tiara are no longer present. No lordship or kingship command exists. The two big rivers, previously lush and life-giving banks, now only support weeds. Highways and roads are untraveled. Thriving Sumer is like an abandoned wasteland. How devastated is the country, the abode of men and gods. Unknown to man, a catastrophe struck the region. A catastrophe that humankind had never experienced before and was unstoppable. A disrupting hand of horror was laid upon all the regions from west to east. The gods were as helpless as men in their cities. An evil wind inflicted a great calamity in its path. A storm formed in a remote plain. A wind that brings death and travels from west to east has been fated to follow that path. A storm is as devastating as a deluge, destroying not with water but with wind, overwhelming not with tidal waves but with poisoned air. It was created by fate rather than destiny. The great gods had brought about the great calamity in their meeting. It was approved by Enlil and Ninhursag. I was the only one pleading for a halt. I fought day and night to accept the sky's will, but in vain. The warrior son of Enlil, Ninurta, and my son Nergal poisoned weapons and let them loose across the vast plain. We were unaware that an evil wind would follow the brilliance. Now they sob in pain. Who could predict that the storm that brings death, born in the west, would make its way to the east? Now the gods lament. The gods in their sacred cities watched in disbelief as the evil wind traveled towards Sumer. The gods left their temples to the wind and, one by one, left their city. I was powerless to stop the poisonous cloud as it moved toward my city, Eridu. Get away to the vast steppe. I gave orders to the people. I left the city with Ninki, my wife. Enlil was powerless to halt it at his city of Nippur, where the bond heaven-earth was created. The evil wind was blowing against Nippur. Enlil hastily launched his celestial boat with his wife. Nanna begged his father Enlil for help at Ur, the capital city of Sumer. Nanna was the hand of fate and disregarded his father's pleas in the temple's location, which rises to heaven in 7 steps. Turn the evil wind away, O great God who gave birth to me, and gave the kingship to Ur. In a plea, Nanna. Continue to honor the great deity who controls fortunes by sparing Ur and her inhabitants. Nanna filed a protest. Noble son, your excellent city lordship was granted. Eternal reign was not, replied Enlil in response to his son Nanna. Ningal, grab your wife and run from the city. Even I, who set the fates, am powerless to change destiny, my brother Enlil said. But unfortunately, it was not destiny. A tragedy that hasn't been this serious since the flood gods and humans were hit. Sadly, it wasn't fate. The great deluge and the great calamity of the death-dealing storm were both predestined to occur. It was brought about by the breaking of a vow, by a council vote, and the deployment of weapons of terror. The poisoned weapons were released by choice rather than fate, and the lot was decided upon by thought. My firstborn caused the immediate destruction of my 2 sons. Revenge was in their hearts for Marduk. Marduk is not entitled to ascendancy. I will confront him with weapons, Ninurta said. Firstborn Enlil yelled. He gathered an army of people, using Babilai to declare the center of the earth. So yelled Nergal, Marduk's brother. In the big gods' meeting, poisonous phrases were said. I spoke up against haste day and night. Peace, I offered advice. Why does opposition persist when the populace has erected his divine image a second time? I begged the question. The age of Marduk in the sky has yet to come. Has each instrument been examined? I repeated my question. Ningish Zida, my own son, and other heavenly indications are mentioned. I knew that his heart could not forgive Marduk for what he had done to him. Enlil on Earthborn encountered Nanna, who was also unyielding. Marduk established his own home during my time in the northern city. Then he said, the youngest son of Enlil, Ishkur, was sentenced to punishment and told to whore after the people he had created in his domains. Utu, son of Nanna, aimed his anger at Marduk's son Nabu and attempted to take control of the location of the celestial chariots. The identical twin of Utu, Inanna, was enraged and continued to demand that Marduk be punished for killing her beloved Dumuzi. Mother of the gods and humans, Ninhursag, looked elsewhere. Why is Marduk not present? All she said was, Gibil, my own son, said somberly, Marduk has disregarded all pleadings and asserts his sovereignty based on signs from heaven. The only way to stop Marduk is with guns, Enlil's firstborn Ninurta yelled. It was essential to Utu to keep Marduk's hands off the place of the celestial chariots so it wouldn't crumble. Then he said, Let the old weapons of terror for eradication be utilized, angrily commanded Nergal, lord of the lower domain. I looked at my own son in astonishment. Using fear weapons in brother-against-brother battles has been forbidden. There was silence rather than agreement. Enlil spoke quietly, saying, Punishment must be meted out. The evildoers shall be as birds without wings. Marduk and Nabu us of legacy are depriving. Let them of the place of the celestial chariots be deprived. Let the area be burned to a crisp. The one who scorches let me be, yelled Ninurta. Excitedly, Nergal jumped up and yelled, Let the towns of the evildoers likewise be demolished. Let me obliterate the cities of wickedness. Let the Annihilator be my name after that. I firmly asserted that since earthlings were our creation, neither the pious nor the sinful should perish. My co-creator Ninhursag approved, saying, The issue is between the gods alone to settle. The people must not be hurt. Anu was paying close attention to the conversations and the celestial home. Anu, who controls destiny, spoke from his heavenly home. Let the weapons of terror be used this once. Let the place of the rocket ships be destroyed. Let the people be spared. Let Nergal be the Annihilator and Ninurta the Scorcher be. Enlil concurred as well, and the choice was made public. I'll let them in on a god's secret and the location of the terror weapons. Enlil called his 2 sons, mine and the other his, to his inner chamber. Nergal passed me without looking at me. Alas, brother has turned against brother, I shouted aloud without using words. Do the prior times have to happen again? Enlil disclosed a myth from ancient times, trusting the weapons of terror to their hands. They are set loose, clad in dread and splendor, turning everything in their path into dust. They had vowed to fight each other as brothers on earth, regardless of the place. The oath was now rendered meaningless, like a broken jar. The 2 sons came from Enlil's chamber with hastened steps, jumping with joy as the weapons left. None of his disasters had a foreshadowing, so the other gods turned around and went back to their cities. This is a description of earlier times and terrorist weapons. The beginning came before the prior times, and the olden times followed the prior times. The gods visited Earth in ancient times and made the first humans there. No gods existed in the prior times, and humans had not yet been created. The gods' home during the prior times was on their own planet Nibiru. Nibiru is a giant planet with a reddish brilliance that orbits the Sun in an extended orbit. Nibiru spends some time in the cold. The Sun strongly heats it for a portion of its orbit. Dense atmosphere Nibiru is continuously nourished by volcanic outbursts. This atmosphere supports many lives. Without it, there would be just perishing. The core heat of Nibiru surrounds the globe throughout the cold season like an ever-renewing warm cloak. It protects Nibiru from the sun's harsh rays in the hot season. While it is raining, it holds and releases water to create lakes and streams. All kinds of life have sprung out in the waterways and on the land because of the lush vegetation that blankets our atmosphere, feeding and protecting it. After a long time, our species grew a seed that could keep going forever. As the number of us grew, our ancestors moved to many parts of Nibiru. Some worked for land, and some with 4 legs took care of the animals. Some of them lived in the mountains, and some of them lived in the valleys. Rivalries and encroachments led to fights, and sticks were used as weapons. Clans formed tribes, and 2 big nations stood face to face. The country of the north took up arms against the country of the south. What was held by hand was turned into missiles that shot forward. Thunderous and bright weapons made things even scarier. The entire world was at war for a long time, and brothers fought against brothers. Both north and south were affected by death and destruction. For a long time the land was empty, and there wasn't much life. Then a truce was called, and efforts to make peace were made. The messengers told each other, "Let the nations come together. Let there be one throne on Nibiru and one king who rules over everyone. Let a leader from the north or south be chosen by chance, and let there be only one king." If he is from the north, the south should choose a woman to be his wife and rule with him. If a south man is chosen by lot, he should marry a north woman. Let them be husband and wife and become one flesh. Let their firstborn son take over. Let this create a unified dynasty and bring peace to Nibiru for good. Peace began amid the wreckage. North and south were brought together by marriage. The royal throne became one body, and a line of kings went on without a break. After peace, the first king was an influential leader from the north. He was chosen by drawing lots. He was honest and fair, and his decisions were respected. He built a beautiful city to live in. It was called Akkad, which means unity. For his rule, he was given the title Celestial One, which meant he was a king. He brought law and order back to the land by force and made the rules and laws. He put governors in charge of each land. Their primary jobs were to restore and reclaim the land. In the royal records, it was written that he united the lands and brought peace back to Nibiru. He built a new city, fixed the canals, and fed the people, so there was plenty of food on the land. He chose a young woman from the south to be his wife. She was known for both love and war. Antu was her royal title, and her given name cleverly meant the leader who is Anu's spouse. She had 3 boys and no girls with Anu. She gave her first son the name Anki, which means a solid foundation in the language of Anu. He sat on the throne by himself, and the choice of a wife was put off twice. The palace was filled with concubines during his rule, but he never had a son. So the dynasty began with Anki's death, since he had no children. Even though he wasn't the firstborn, the middle son was named the legal heir. One of 3 brothers was called Lutu Nergal by his mother since he was a child. His name meant the one in the middle. From the royal records, Anki is called. In divine kingship, the name of the one who is Anu's son is shown through the generations. He was the 3rd person to rule Nibiru. His father, An, was the 2nd. He married the daughter of Enki's half-brother Nin, called Lil, the Lady of Lil. Anib and Ninib had a son. He was the 4th king to take over the throne based on the number of kings. Anshargal wanted to be known by his royal name, which meant Anu's prince, who is greatest of princes. His wife Kishargal was his half-sister. They both had the same name. His primary goal was to learn and understand. He worked hard to learn how the heavens worked. He looked into Nibiru's big circle, whose length had to be set at a shah. 1 year on Nibiru was used to track how long each king or queen ruled. He split the shah into 10 parts and then announced 2 festivals. When the earth was closest to the sun, a festival of warmth was held. When Nibiru went to its faraway home, the festival of coolness was set up. The 2 were set up to replace all the old festivals of tribes and nations and bring people together. He set up laws for husbands and wives and sons and daughters by decree. He also made the customs of the first tribes the law for the entire land. During the wars, there were many more women than men. He made rules that said 1 male could have over 1 female. By law, only 1 wife can be the official spouse. This wife is called the first wife to be called. By law, the firstborn son took over for his father. By following these rules, people soon needed clarification. If the firstborn son wasn't from the first wife, then a son was born by the first wife, who became the legal heir by law? Who will be the next leader? The one with the most firstborn children? The one who was born by the first wife? The youngest son, the heir by law? Who will get the money? Who will do well? While Anshargal was king, Kishargal was named his first wife. She was the king's half-sister. During Anshargal's rule, the palace was once again filled with concubines. The king's sons and daughters were born to his concubines. The first child to be born was the son of a concubine. The child was called the firstborn. Then Kishargal gave birth to a son. By law he was the heir, but he was not the firstborn. In the palace, Kishargal got angry and yelled, "Let the double seed not be forgotten if the rules say my son, who was born to a first wife, can't be king. Even though we have different moms, the king and I have the same father. I am the king's half-sister, and he is my half-brother. By that, my son, our father Anib's double seed has it. Let the law of the seed and the law of marriage rule from now on. From now on, a son by a half-sister should take the throne before all other sons." Anshargal liked the law of the seed when he thought about it. It would keep his wife and concubine's marriage and divorce from getting mixed up. In their meeting, the king's advisors agreed on the law of the seed for succession. The scribes wrote the decree because the king told them to. So, based on the law of the seed, the name of the next king was made public. He was given the name Anshar, which means king. He was fifth in line for the throne. This is the story of Anshar's rule and the kings who came after him. When the law was changed, there was fighting among the other princes. There were words, but there was no rebellion. As his half-sister and wife, Anshar chose. He made her his first wife and gave her the name Kishar. So, because of this law, the dynasty kept going. During Anshar's rule, the crops in the fields got smaller, with fewer fruits and grains. From one circuit to the next, their heat got more muscular as they got closer to the sun, while the coolness in the faraway home got more biting. In Akkad, the city of the throne, the king and many wise people got together. People with a lot of knowledge and intelligence were told to ask questions. They looked at the land and soil and tried out the lakes and streams. It's happened before, and some people said Nibiru had grown in the past when it was colder or warmer. It has a fate since it is part of the circuit of Nibiru. Others who knew the edge and watched the circuit did not think about Nibiru's destiny being to blame. They found that there had been a breaching in the atmosphere. Spitting up were volcanoes, the atmosphere, forebears, and people who burped less. The air on Nibiru has become less dense, and the protective shield has shrunk. Pestilences spread during the rule of Anshar and Kishar, and no amount of work could stop them. The throne was then taken over by their son Enshar, who was the sixth member of that family. Lord of the Shah was what the name meant. He was born with a lot of knowledge and learned a lot throughout his life. He looked for ways to fix the problems, like Nibiru's path through the heavens, and he did a lot of research. It wrapped around 5 beautiful planets in its loop of the sun's family. He had their atmospheres looked at, seeing if there were any ways to heal them. He gave each one a name. He honored their ancestors and thought of them as heavenly couples. The first 2 planets he saw were An and Antu, like twins. Anshar and Kishar, the biggest ones, were outside Nibiru's circle. Gaga, among others, traveled as a messenger, sometimes meeting Nibiru first. As the sun went around, 5 heavenly beings greeted Nibiru. Beyond the hammered bracelet, the sun made a circle like a boundary. The hammered bracelet was like a guardian of heaven's forbidding area, protecting it from chaos. The bracelet kept the 4 other children of the sun from getting hurt. Enshar set out to study how the 5 greeters made people feel. In Nibiru's loop, 5 things were carefully looked at. What atmospheres they had were closely looked at by watching them and using celestial chariots. The findings were surprising, and the discoveries were hard to understand. Nibiru's atmosphere breaching got worse from circuit to circuit. In the councils of the wise, people talked about cures and ways to bandage wounds with great interest. A new shield was tried to cover the planet, but it all fell back to the ground. The volcanoes that spewed ash were looked at in councils of the wise. The atmosphere was created by volcanoes spewing ash into the air, and it hurt when they stopped. Let people devise new ways to burp, and let volcanoes spew again, what one savants group said. All the kings could only tell how the feat could be done or what tools could be used. During Anshar's rule, the hole in the sky got bigger. There were no rains, the winds were more potent, and no springs were coming from the ground. There was a charge in the land that mothers' breasts were dry. There was trouble in the palace, and a charge spread. As his first wife, he married his half-sister Enshar, which was against the law of the seed. Bear of the Shahs, the lady was what people called Ninshar. Enshar had a son as a concubine, the firstborn son, a son she didn't give birth to. Ninshar's first wife and half-sister didn't have a son. By the law of succession, the throne went to the concubine's son. He was the seventh person to rule. His royal name was Du-Uru, which means in the dwelling place made. He was born in the house of concubines, not in the palace. Du-Uru chose a young woman from his youth to be his wife. He chose the first wife because he loved her, not because she was his daughter. Du-Uru was her royal name, which meant, "She who is by my side." There was a lot of confusion in the royal court. Sons didn't get to inherit, and wives weren't half-sisters. There was more and more suffering on the land. People became less fertile, and the fields forgot how full they used to be. There was no birth in the palace. Neither a son nor a daughter was born. 7 of An's children were kings, and then none of his children were on the throne. A child named Dauru was found at the palace gate, and the queen took him in as her son. In the end, Du-Uru adopted him as a son and made him his legal heir. His name, Lamu, means dryness. The princes were complaining in the palace, and there were also complaints in the Council of Councillors. In the end, Lamu took his place on the throne. Even though he wasn't An's son, he was the 8th king. In the councils of the wise, there were 2 ideas for how to heal the brace. One had to use a metal called gold. It was rare in Nibiru, but there was a lot in the hammered bracelet. It was the only thing that could be ground into the finest powder and stay in the air high above heaven. So, with more supplies, the hole would close up and protection would improve. Let there be celestial boats and a star fleet to bring gold to Nibiru. The other idea was to make weapons of terror that would make the ground shake and the mountains break apart. With missiles, the volcanoes can be attacked, their slumber is broken, their belching made worse, the atmosphere filled up, and the hole made to go away. Lamu was too weak to choose, but he knew what to do. One time around, Nibiru went around 2 shahs. Nibiru was added to the list. In the fields, things didn't get better. The atmosphere was not fixed by volcanic farts. A 3rd shah went by, and a 4th was added to the total. No gold was gained. There was a lot of fighting on the land, but there wasn't enough food or water. There was no longer unity in the land, and accusations were everywhere. Intelligent people came from the royal court, and councillors rushed in and out. The king didn't care what they said. He only wanted advice from his wife, named Lahama. "If it's fate," she said, "let's ask the great creator of all to help the king. The only hope is to beg on the internet." The princes at the royal court were upset, and the king was accused of being stupid and irrational for making things worse instead of better. Weapons were taken out of the old storage places, and there was a lot of talk about starting a rebellion. The first person to take up arms was a prince in the royal palace. By making promises, he stirred up the other princes. His name was Alalu. "Lahmu shouldn't be king anymore," he yelled. "Let decision supplant hesitation. Let's scare the king where he lives. Let's leave his throne empty." The princes listened to what he said and ran to the palace gate. They went like rushing water to the throne room, which had a small entrance. Alalu was after the king, who ran to the palace's tower. There was a fight in the tower, and Lahmu fell to death. "No more Lahmu," Alalu called out. Alalu ran to the throne room and sat on the throne as quickly as he could. He told everyone with joy that the king was dead. He made a king with no rights or counsel. Some people were content that Lahmu had died, while others were saddened by what Alalu had done. This is the story of Alalu becoming king and going to earth. There was no longer unity in the land, and many people were upset with the king. Princes were upset in the palace, and councillors were upset in the council. Anu's place on the throne was passed on from father to son. Even Lahmu VIII was called a son because he was adopted. Who was Alalu? Was he a firstborn or a legal heir? How could he take over? Wasn't he the one who killed the king? Alalu was brought before the seven who judge so that they could decide his fate. Alalu made his pleas to the seven who judge. Even though he was neither a legal heir nor a firstborn son, he was of royal blood. Before the judges he said, "I am from Anshargal. My ancestor was born to him by a concubine. His name was Alam. By Shah's count, Alam was the firstborn. The throne belonged to him, but the queen used her cunning to take away his rights. She made a law of the seed out of nothing, and her son became king. She took the kingship away from Alalu and gave it to her son. I followed Alalu's lineage. The seed of Anshargal is in me." The seven who judge paid attention to what Alalu said. They took the matter to the Council of Councillors to find out if it was true. The royal records were carefully read from the House of Records. Anu and Antu were the first king and queens. They had 3 sons but no daughters. Anki was the firstborn. He died on the throne and had no children. In his place, the middle son took the throne. His name was Anib. Anshargal was his first child and his throne. After him, the firstborn did not stay on the throne. The law of succession by the law of the seed was replaced by a new law. The firstborn was the son of a concubine, but the law said he didn't have the right to be king. Instead, Kishargal's son became king. This was because she was a half-sister of the king. The firstborn, the son of the concubine, was not written down in the history books. "Of him I am descended," Alalu cried out to the councillors. By the law of succession, he was the rightful king. By the law of succession, I am now the rightful king. The councillors of Alalu hesitated before taking the truth oath that was asked of them. Alalu took the oath of life and death, and as king, he thought about what the council had to say. They called the elders and the princes together, and the decision was made before them. A young prince stood up from the group of princes. He had something to say about being king. He told the assembly that succession needs to be looked at again. "Even though I wasn't the firstborn or the queen's son, I came from pure seed. The essence of An is still in me, and no concubine has changed that." The words shocked the councillors, and they told the young prince to come closer. They asked what he was called. "It's Anu. I was named after my grandfather An." When they asked about his family tree, he told them about An's 3 sons. Anki was An's firstborn, but he died without a son or daughter. Anib was the middle son. He took the throne instead of Anki. He married Anib, who was the daughter of his younger brother. From that point on, the succession is written down in the history books. Who was that younger brother? One of the purest seed and the son of An and Antu? The counselors just looked at each other in shock. His name was Enugu, Anu told them. He was my great-great-grandfather. His wife Ninuru was his half-sister, and her firstborn son was named Inama. Seed and succession laws said that his wife was his half-sister, and she gave him a son. By law and seed, the generations kept coming from the same family. My parents named me Anu after our grandfather An. We have been kicked off the throne, but were not kicked off. An's pure seed, let Alalu be removed, let Anu be king, a lot of counselors yelled. Others gave advice. Let there be no fighting, and let unity win. They called Alalu to tell him what they had found. Alalu put his arm around Prince Anu and spoke to him in this way. Even though we have different parents, we both come from the same ancestor. Let's live in peace and help Nibiru return to plenty together. Let me keep the throne, and you take care of the next king. He said to the council, let Anu be crown prince. Let his son marry my daughter, and let the heirs unite. Let him be my successor. Anu bent down in front of the council. He said the following to the group. I will be Alalu's cupbearer and his heir apparent. As his bride, he will choose a son of mine or a daughter of his. That was the council's decision, written down in the royal records. In this way, Alalu stayed seated on the throne. He called on the wise people, geniuses, and commanders. He consulted and learned a lot that helped him decide. He permitted boats from the heavens to be built to find the gold in the hammered bracelet. The boats were crushed by the hammered bracelets, and none returned. Let the weapons of terror be used to cut open Nibiru, and let the volcanoes erupt again. He then gave an order. With weapons of terror, chariots in the sky were loaded with terror missiles and fired from the sky at volcanoes. The mountains moved as bright light and thunder exploded, and the valleys shook. There was a lot of happiness in the land, and there were hopes for plenty. Anu was in the palace for Alalu, who was in charge of the cups. He would bow at Alalu's feet and give Alalu the cup to drink from. Alalu was the king, and Anu worked for him as a servant. There was less joy in the land. The rain stopped, and the winds got more robust. The amount of gas that volcanoes blew out didn't get worse, and the hole in the atmosphere didn't get fixed. Nibiru's circuits kept going around in the sky. It got harder to handle the heat and cold from circuit to circuit. The people of Nibiru stopped respecting their king because he made things worse for them instead of better. Alalu stayed in his seat on the throne. The most powerful and wise prince, Anu, was standing before him. He would bow to Alalu's feet and give Alalu the cup to drink from. Alalu was the king of Nibiru for 9 times that were measured. In the 9th Shah, Alalu and Anu fought. Alalu challenged him to fight hand-to-hand with no clothes on. Anu said, let the winner be king. They fought in the public square. Doorposts and walls shook as they did so. Alalu bent his knee and fell on his chest to the ground. Alalu was defeated in battle, and Anu was hailed as king and taken to the palace. However, Alalu did not return to the palace. He sneaked away from the crowds because he feared doing what Lamu did. He quickly went to where the celestial chariots were, but no one knew. Alalu got into a chariot that could shoot missiles and shut the door behind him. He went into the front chamber and sat in the commander's chair. That which shows the way filled the chamber with a bluish glow. He woke up the firestones, and their humming sound was mesmerizing. He brought to life the chariot's great cracker which was shining with a reddish light. Alalu from Nibiru got away in the celestial boat without anyone else knowing. Alalu set his course for a snowy earth. He chose his destination from the start by keeping it a secret. What the second part of this Akkadian tablet MC2894A says. Alalu's flight in a spacecraft that had nuclear weapons. He heads for the 7th planet, Ki, Earth. Why he thinks gold will be on Earth. The history of the solar system, the water, and the gold of Tiamat. The first time Nibiru was seen from space. The battle of the gods and the breakup of Tiamat. Earth, half of Tiamat, gets her water and gold. Kingu, Tiamat's giant satellite, becomes Earth's moon. Nibiru will continuously circle the sun. When Alalu came to Earth and touched down. When Alalu finds gold, Nibiru's fate is in his hands. The reverse side of Moorhen Collection Akkadian Tablet MC2894A. Alalu set his course for snowy Earth, but kept his destination a secret. Alalu went to off-limits places. No one had been there before, and no one at the Hammered Bracelet had tried to cross there. A secret from the start, Alalu's path has shown. It put the fate of Nibiru in his hands, and he devised a plan to make his kingship universal. He had to go into exile on Nibiru, but he risked death. In his plan, the risk was in the journey, and the reward was the eternal glory of success. Alalu looked at the heavens while flying like an eagle. Down below, Nibiru was a ball hanging in space. Its shape was beautiful, and its light lit up the sky. It was a considerable size, and when it burped, fire shot out. Its red, life-giving envelope was like a churning sea. The break was clear, like a dark wound in the middle of it. When he looked down again, the large hole had become a small tub. When he looked again, Nibiru's bright ball had become a small fruit. The next time he looked, Nibiru was gone from the vast dark sea. Alalu's heart was filled with regret, and fear held him by the hands. He made a choice to wait. Alalu thought about stopping in his tracks. Then he went back from being brave to make a decision. The chariot went 100 leagues, then 1,000 leagues, and then 10,000 leagues. Darkness was the darkest in the vast heavens, and the eyes of the stars far away were blinking. Alalu traveled more leagues, and then he saw something that made him very happy. In the vastness of the heavens, he was greeted by the messenger of the gods. Little Gaga, the one who shows the way, was welcomed by Alalu as he went around the circle. Before and after the celestial Antu, it would move with an uneven gait. It could face forward or backward because it had two faces. Alalu once thought that its first appearance was a good sign. He is welcomed by the gods of the sky. So was what he thought. Alalu rode his chariot along Gaga's path, which led to the second god of the heavens. Soon after, King Enshar gave it the name Celestial Antu. It was getting dark in the deep. She was as blue as clean water and the beginning of the upper waters. Alalu was amazed by how beautiful the scene was, so he kept a safe distance from the course. In the far distance, Antu's wife shimmered. She was the same size as Antu. His wife's double, An, was known for being a greenish blue. On its side, a dazzling host surrounded it, and they were given solid grounds. Alalu said goodbye to the two gods with love, but Gaga's path was still unclear. It was showing its old master, for whom it used to be a counselor, how the course was changing for Anshar, the highest priest of the heavens. By the speeding chariot, Alalu could see how Anshar was pulling him in. The chariot was beautiful, with bright rings of colors. He quickly turned his eyes away from Alalu and toward that which shows the way. He saw the family's bright star in the faraway heavens, which was very unusual. After a terrifying sight, the truth came out. A giant monster, following its destiny, cast a darkening shadow on the sun. Its creator, Kishar, ate it up. The event was scary, and Alalu thought it was a bad sign. It was too big for the giant Kishar, who was the leader of the firm planets. Storms swirled around it, hiding its face, and colored spots moved around on it. The god in the sky was surrounded by so many people that it was impossible to count them all. Their ways were hard to deal with, and they kept going back and forth. A spell was cast on Kishar, sending out divine lightning bolts. As Alalu watched, his path got off track. His direction was unclear, and his actions needed to be clarified. Then the deep darkness disappeared, and Kishar continued on his destiny to the circuit. As it slowly moved, the sun's light lifted its veil, revealing the one from the beginning. Joy in Alalu's heart was not long-lasting. He knew that beyond the fifth planet was the most dangerous place. The hammered bracelet was in charge. It was waiting to be broken. It was made by hammering together rocks and boulders. The rocks worked together like orphans without a mother. They went back and forth following an old plan. Their actions were disgusting, and their ways were hard to understand. Nibiru's probing chariots ate them up like hungry lions. The valuable gold that was needed to stay alive. They didn't want to move. Alalu's chariot was going full speed toward the hammered bracelet. The fierce boulders had to be bravely faced in close combat. Alalu stirred up the firestones in his chariot even more, and he drove that which shows the way with steady hands. The scary boulders next to the chariot moved forward like an enemy coming to attack. Alalu fired a death-dealing missile at them from the chariot. Then he fired another terror weapon at the enemy. As scared warriors, the boulders turned around, making way for Alalu. The hammered bracelet is like a spell that opens the door to the king. Even though Alalu was very deep and dark, the heavens were easy to see. He was not defeated by the bracelet's power. His mission did not end. In the distance, the sun's fiery ball, which was also its brilliance, was sending out rays of light toward Alalu. Before, it was a reddish-brown planet making its way around. It was the sixth of the gods of the sky. Alalu could only catch a glimpse of it as it moved quickly away from his path. The seventh object in the sky was the snow-colored earth. Alalu set his course toward the planet, and it was a very inviting place. Its catchy ball was more petite than Nibiru, and its catchy net was weaker than Nibiru. It had a thinner atmosphere than Nibiru, and clouds were swirling. Below, the earth is broken up into 3 regions. Snow white on top and bottom, with blue and brown in the middle. Alalu skillfully put the chariot's wings around the earth's ball to make a circle. In the middle, you could see both dry land and watery oceans. "I have reached my goal," he told the insides of Earth to pick up on the beam that went straight down. He shouted with excitement. Gold, a lot of gold, was shown by the beam. It was under a dark area and in the water as well. With his heart racing, Alalu decided to think about, will he crash and die if he lets his chariot fall on the dry land? Should he go straight into the water, where he might sink into oblivion? How will he stay alive? Will he discover valuable gold? Alalu was not moving in the eagle's seat, and he gave the chariot to fate. The chariot moved faster because it was fully caught in the earth's net. Its spread wings lit up, The air around Earth was like an oven. Then the chariot started to shake, making a terrible thunder sound. The chariot crashed suddenly, and all of a sudden, it stopped. Alalu couldn't move because the shaking and crash had made him lose his mind. Then he opened his eyes and saw that he was still alive. He had won and made it to the planet of gold. Now, here's what we know about the Earth and its gold. It tells about the beginning of time and how the gods in the sky made the world. When it all started in the above, there were no gods in the heavens, and in the below, Ki, there was no name for the firm ground. Apsu, their first leader, was all alone in the void. In the heights of the above, there were no celestial gods yet, and in the depths of the below there were no celestial gods either. Above and below were no gods yet, and no one knew what would happen. No reeds had grown yet, and there was no marshland. Apsu ruled the void all by himself. Then his winds mixed the waters of the beginning, and Apsu cast a divine and clever spell over the waters. He slept soundly in the deep of the void. Tiamat, the mother of everything, became his wife. She, indeed, was a mother from heaven and a watery beauty. Apsu's little Mumu then gave birth next to him, and he gave Tiamat a gift to bring to him as his messenger. Only she can have a gleaming metal, gold, that lasts forever. Apsu gave this beautiful gift to his wife. Then their waters mixed, and they had divine children to bring into the world. The Celestials were created in both male and female forms. Lamu and Lahamu were their given names. Apsu and Tiamat constructed a house below. Anshar and Kisha were created in the waters of the above when they were older and taller. They were taller than their older brothers. The two were created to be a celestial couple, and they had a son named An in the faraway heavens. He was their scion. Then Antu was brought out, who was An's equal and would be his wife. Their house was built on the outskirts of the upper waters. This is how, below and above, 3 heavenly couples were created in the depths. They were known as Apsu's family because Mumu and Tiamat were among them. Nibiru had yet to be seen. The earth had to be created first. The holy waters had become entangled, and even a hammered bracelet couldn't separate them. Not all of the circuits had been completed. The fates of the gods had yet to be determined. The Celestials got together, but they did strange things. Tiamat was upset and angry because she couldn't sleep on their journey to Apsu. She gathered a large crowd to march alongside her. She gave birth to a people who roared and fought against Apsu's sons. She had 11 of these babies. She made Kingu the group's firstborn and leader. When the gods of the sky learned about it, they convened a council meeting. She promoted Kingu to the rank of an An and gave him the order. They exchanged words. She placed a tablet of destiny on his chest, completing his circuit. She told her son Kingu to fight the gods, but who would stand up to Tiamat? Each god inquired of the other. No one from their group stepped forward, and no one was going into battle with a weapon. In the midst of the deep, a god was born. He was born in a location known as the Chamber of Fates. He was created by an artist and was the sun's son. The god quickly abandoned his family in the deep where he was born. He brought the seed of life, a gift from his creator. He set his sights on the void. He was looking for a new direction in his life. Antu was always on the lookout and was the first to spot the wandering celestial. His body was appealing and he shone. His walk was regal and the way he moved was magnificent. He was the most powerful of all the gods, and his circle was more extensive than theirs. Antu was the first to notice him. even though her child had never sucked at her breast. "Come join my family. Allow me to become your mother." She mentioned his name. She cast her net and made him feel at ease. His path was appropriate for the job. Her words made the newcomer proud, and her caring about him made him arrogant. His head doubled in size, and 4 things sprouted from his sides. He moved his lips in agreement, and a holy fire began to burn from them. He turned to face Antu, about to show On his face. When On saw him, he exclaimed, my son, my son. You will be responsible for something, and a host will be your servant. Let your name be Nibiru, because crossing will be remembered forever." When Nibiru passed by, he bowed to him and turned his back. He cast his net for Nibiru's 4 servants and caught them. His hosts are the south wind, north wind, fast wind, and west wind. With a joyful heart, Anu told his ancestor Anshar about Nibiru. When Anshar's messenger Gaga heard this, he sent words of wisdom to An to assign a task to Nibiru's people. He told Gaga to say what was on his mind. That Tiamat, the woman who gave birth to us, now despises us. She has organized a group of people who want to fight, and she is furious. Her 11 warriors and children fight alongside her against the gods. She piled Kingu on top of them and scribbled a fate on his chest for no apparent reason. No god can withstand her poison. She has made us all fear her. Allow Nibiru to become our assailant. Let him defeat Tiamat and save our lives. Decide what will happen to him, and then let him face our formidable foe. He went to Gaga. He bowed before him and repeated Anshar's words. He told Nibiru what his ancestor said and what Gaga said to him. Nibiru was taken aback by the words. Based on what he had heard, he imagined the mother whose children would eat her alive. He addressed An and Gaga. Without saying anything, his heart told him to go fight Tiamat. He stated, "If I am to defeat Tiamat and save your lives, I must gather the gods and declare that my destiny is supreme. Let all the gods agree in council that I should be in charge and that they should obey my commands." When Lamu and Lahamu heard this, they cried out in agony. The request was strange, and no one knew what it meant. The fate-deciding gods communicated with one another, so they informed me. They were all in agreement that Nibiru would be their avenger, and that he would have a wonderful life. Nobody will be able to argue with your rules from now on. None of us gods will go beyond your boundaries, they told him. Nibiru, go be our avenger. They carved out a princely path for him to take to Tiamat. They blessed Nibiru and bestowed upon him powerful weapons. Anshar also brought the evil wind, the whirlwind, and the matchless wind from Nibiru. Kishar's body was engulfed in flames, and he held a net around Tiamat. As a result, Nibiru set a direct course for Tiamat and prepared for battle. Now, let's look at what happened during the celestial battle. How the earth got its lead, and what will happen to Nibiru. The Lord went out and did his assigned task. He turned to face the raging Tiamat and cast a spell. He put on the pulsar and the emitter to protect himself. His crowned head glowed with a terrifying light. The smiter was on his right and the repeller was on his left. Like a storm, he sent out his 7 helpers, the winds. He dashed toward Tiamat, who was enraged and yelling for a fight. The gods surrounded him, but they did not follow him. He was going forward to get a better look at Tiamat and her entourage, the plan devised by Kingu, the leader of her host. He lost his sense of direction, got off track, and didn't know what to do when he saw brave Kingu. Tiamat's group was completely surrounded, and they trembled in terror. Tiamat shook down to her roots and let out a mighty roar. She cast a spell and surrounded him with her charms on Nibiru. They both agreed on something, and the fight began. Tiamat and Nibiru came face to face and moved in opposite directions. As the battle approached, they decided to fight on their own. The Lord spread his net and threw it in an attempt to catch her. Tiamat screamed like she was insane in rage. She had gone insane. Nibiru pushed the evil wind from behind him in front of her and let it go. She attempted to swallow the evil wind, but could not close her mouth. The evil wind struck her in the stomach and entered her body. Her stomach was rumbling, her body was swollen, and her mouth was open wide. Nibiru pierced the hole with a sharp arrow of divine lightning. It entered her body through her stomach, it shattered, it tore into her womb and broke her heart. He took her last breath now that he had her under control. Nibiru examined Tiamat's lifeless body, which resembled a dead animal. The 11 employees of their deceased employer trembled in horror. They were caught in Nibiru's net and were unable to escape. Tiamat made Kingu the gang's leader, so he was one of them. He was chained and tethered to his dead mistress by the Lord. He took the tablets of destiny from Kingu, which he found repulsive. He signed the destine and tied it to his chest. The rest of Tiamat's troop became prisoners in his web. He trod on them, breaking them up into small bits. He connected them to his circuit and led them back to the course to turn around. Nibiru then fled the area where the combat had taken place, to the gods, who sent him to inform them of their victory. Nibiru passed on and Antu on his way to the abode in the deep. He circled Apsu, visiting Kisha and Anshar along the way. He proceeded to tell the others after Gaga came out to greet him. He next considered what would happen to Tiamat, who was no longer alive, and Kingu. Lord Nibiru returned to Tiamat, whom he had tamed. He found her, glanced at her dead body, and then walked away. A deception was devised to divide the monster in his heart. Then, like a muscle, he split her chest and lower torso into 2 halves. When the Lord trod on her backside, he severed her top half. He cut open her inner channels and marveled at her golden veins. He summoned the north wind, his ally, from his side. He instructed them to place the severed head of the wind in the empty area. The Nibiru wind then passed over Tiamat, sweeping over her raging waves. Nibiru fired a lightning bolt at North Wind. He transmitted a message, and Tiamat's head was taken away in a blaze of light to an unknown location. Kingu was also sent away with her, and the portion that had been severed was to be his friend. Nibiru then considered what would happen to the back part. He wanted it to be a combat trophy that would survive eternally. The battleground to be enshrined serves as a permanent reminder. He used his mace to sever the horse's back. They then strung them all together to form a hammered bracelet. He secured them as watchmen by locking them together, a firmament to keep the waters separate from the waters. Nibiru has created beautiful works of art by separating the upper waters above the firmament from the lower waters. The Lord then crossed the heavens to examine the area, taking measurements from Apsu's quarters to Gaga's dwelling. He then stared at the deep, Nibiru's rim and his birthplace. He paused for a moment to reflect before returning to the battleground, the firmament. He resented traveling through Apsu's country and remembering the sun's departed spouse. He focused his attention on Tiamat's wounded side and her upper body. Her treasure from the wounds, the life fluids, continued to flow. The rays of the sun were reflected in her golden veins. Then Nibiru realized his creator's birthright, the seed of life. He gave Tiamat the seed when he crushed and tore her apart. With your warm beams you can heal the injured, he told Apsu. Give the broken part new life in your family as your future daughter. Gather the rivers in one place and let the stable ground arise. Firm land, please call her Ki from now on. Apsu listened carefully when Nibiru stated, Let the earth join my family, Ki, firm land of the below. Let earth be her name from now on. Apsu said, Allow her to remain there by turning. I will provide her with healing rays throughout the day. Allow Kingu to be a creature of the night, and I will make him the moon for all time, Earth's friend. Nibiru, Apsu's words were heard with delight. He studied the areas as he flew through the heavens. He bestowed permanent positions on the gods who raised him. None of their circuits were designed to be broken or to fall short of each other. He strengthened the heavenly locks and gates on both his established sides. He chose an outermost residence that was sized beyond Gaga. He pleaded with Apsu to declare that the grand circuit would be his destiny. Every deity called out from their thrones, Let Nibiru's power be surpassed. Let the sun's sun indeed be the brightest of the gods. Before leaving his apartments, Apsu gave his approval. Nibiru, whose name means crossing, will preside over the union of heaven and earth. The gods will not pass through anything above or below him. He will occupy the center and serve as the god's shepherd. His circuit will always be one Shah. That is his destiny. This is the narrative of how the olden times began, as well as the period known as the Golden Era in the annals, and how expeditions from Nibiru were dispatched to Earth to acquire gold. It all started with Alalu's flight from Nibiru. Alalu infused much of what he had learned with extraordinary insight. His forefather Anshargal gathered excellent knowledge about the heavens and circuits. Anshar significantly improved their knowledge. Alalu received considerable knowledge from it. He talked with intelligent men and sought guidance from savants and commanders. Alalu had this knowledge because he had studied about the beginning. The gold on the hammered bracelet served as confirmation. The gold in Tiamat's hammered bracelet was the indicator. With thundering claps, Alalu triumphantly landed on the planet of gold in a chariot. He used a beam to scan the surroundings for his whereabouts. Hello, a chariot came down to Earth and landed on the edge of a vast marsh. He changed into a fish suit and an eagle helmet. He then unlocked chariot's hatch, pausing to consider. The heavens were blue-white and the earth was dark. There was silence and no one to greet him. He stood alone in a strange world, perhaps from Nibiru, exiled forever. He lowered himself to the ground and trod on the dark-colored earth. Hills in the distance could be seen, and many forests nearby. He stepped into one of the wetlands in front of him. He trembled as he felt the chill of the marsh's waters. He returned to solid ground and found himself alone in an unfamiliar world. He was seized with thoughts, aching for his bride and children. Had he been exiled from Nibiru forever? He couldn't stop wondering about it. He quickly returned to the chariot with food and drink to keep himself alive. Then, thanks to profound sleep, he awoke from a deep nap. He couldn't remember how long he'd slept or what had woken him up. Outside, there was a dazzling light and an unseen glow on Nibiru. He took a tester-equipped pole from the chariot. It consumed the planet's air, proving its compatibility. After opening the chariot's hatch, he inhaled deeply. He inhaled again, then another, then another. The air in Key was suitable. Alalu clasped his hands and sang a happy tune. He perished without a fish suit or an eagle helmet. The sun's rays were blinding, and the brightness outside was overwhelming. He returned to the chariot with an eye mask. He took up the sword he was carrying and the expensive sampler. He was on the dark-colored earth where he had stepped. He made his way toward the marshes, whose water was a dark greenish. Alalu took a pebble from the swamp's edge and tossed it into the area. As he moved across the marsh, he noticed the fish-filled streams below. He lowered the sampler into the swamp and considered the filthy waters. Alalu was devastated to find that the water was unsafe to drink. He pulled a U-turn and went for the hills away from the marshes. As he proceeded through the foliage, he passed through shrubs and trees. Because of the number of fruit-bearing plants, the area resembled an orchard. As the pleasant perfume of the fruit enticed Alalu, he placed it on his lips. The sweeter the flavor, the more delicious the fragrance. Alalu was delighted with joy. Alalu was walking away from the sun's rays toward the hills he had chosen. He felt moisture under his feet among the branches, indicating the presence of water nearby. He planned his route toward the dampness. There was a still pool of water and a pond in the woods. He lowered the sampler into the pond since it was safe to drink. Alalu couldn't stop himself from laughing. There was fruit and fish, and the water was drinkable. Alalu knelt, cupped his hands together, and drew water to his mouth. The water became cold, and the water from Nibiru had a distinct flavor. He drank again, then split in two, terrified. He heard a hissing sound and saw a writhing body alongside the pool. He grabbed his weapon and fired a flash of light toward the hissing. Both the moving and hissing stopped. Alalu approached the threat to examine it. Nibiru's sight has never been seen, but the bizarre sight of the lifeless creature with its slithered body lying immobile and lacking any hands or feet was that of a rope. It was a creature from another world. Its little head was ornamented with fierce eyes, and a lengthy tongue protruded from its mouth. Alalu reflected on himself. Was it the orchard's keeper? Was it the water's master? He doubted himself. He was carrying water in his flask and moving while keeping a lookout for the chariot. He also gathered some excellent fruits before setting off for the chariot. When he arrived at the chariot, the sun's brightness had faded, and darkness had taken its place. Alalu was taken aback by how short the day had been. An astonishing lightness was developing on the horizon from the direction of the marshes. A bright white ball was rapidly rising in the sky. He had now seen Kingu, Earth's mate. The planets and their circuits, the hammered bracelet, Ki, the Earth, and Kingu, its moon, were constructed and named. Alalu felt that beholding demanded one more truth. The secret to salvation rested in the gold to be discovered. If the stories from the beginning are true and Tiamat's golden veins were indeed swept away by the waves, the cut-off half of gold must be discovered in Ki. With shaking hands, Alalu the tester disassembled the chariot's pole. As they eagerly anticipated the approaching daybreak, the fish's outfit was put on with trembling hands. He walked out of the chariot and onto the marshes at first light. He waded the tester deeper into the waters he had introduced. As his heart thumped in his chest, he attentively examined its illuminated visage. The tester showed its findings in the water's composition, represented by symbols and numbers. "There is gold in the seas," the tester said, and Alalu's heart stopped. He lowered the tester back into the water, and the gold tester announced once more. Alalu took a step forward, wobbly on his legs before continuing into the marshes. "Nibiru's destiny is now in my hands," declared Alalu proudly. He returned to the chariot, removed the fish disguise, and took his seat as commander. The tablets of destinies are aware of all the circuits. He connected to Nibiru's circuit to decide the direction. He summoned the speaker of words to deliver the words to Nibiru. Then he spoke the words of Nibiru. He was described as follows. In his words, the great Alalu addresses Anu on Nibiru. In another world, I discovered the gold of salvation. Nibiru's future is in my control. You must heed my requests. A synopsis of Mohen Collection Babylonian Tablet MC 17494b. Enlil, Anu's first son, suggests on-site verification. Alalu sends the message to Nibiru and reclaims the throne. Anu, taken aback, puts the subject to the royal council. Ea, Anu's firstborn and Alalu's son-in-law, is instead chosen. Ea skillfully equips the heavenly boat for the journey. The spacecraft's pilot Anzu is carrying 50 heroes. Despite the perils, the Nibirians exult at the sight of Earth. They splash down and wade ashore, guided by Alalu. Eridu, home away from home, is established in 7 days. The extraction of gold from the canals begins. Despite the small amount, Nibiru needs the delivery of Abgal, a pilot who chooses Alalu's spaceship for the mission. Inside the spaceship, there are illicit nuclear weapons. Ea and Abgal remove and hide the terror weapons. There are 3 tablets. Nibiru's future is in my control. You must heed my requests. Alalu spoke the words, projecting them from Nibiru to the dark-tinted earth. When the monarch Anu got the messages from Alalu, he was shocked, as were the wise men and counselors. They asked each other questions. Is Alalu still alive and well? Could he be from another planet? They were speaking in a skeptical tone. Wasn't he fleeing in the chariot to a safe haven on Nibiru? The chariot commanders were summoned, and the beamed words were considered. The words were spoken from outside the hammered bracelet, not from Nibiru. They discovered this and told King Anu about it. Anu was taken aback and had no idea what had transpired. Let words of acknowledgement to Alalu be delivered to the gathered, he said. At the place of the celestial chariots, Alalu was given the following orders. Anu the king wishes his congratulations and expresses his joy upon knowing about your health. There was no reason for you to leave Nibiru because Anu has no ill will against you. Allow Nibiru to be saved if you have discovered the gold of salvation. When Anu Alalu's chariot spoke, Alalu reacted immediately. If I am to be your savior, I will save your lives. Gather the princes. My ancestry reveals itself to be supreme. Allow the commanders to choose me as their commander and submit to my power. Allow the council to appoint me as ruler, assuming Anu's throne. When people heard Alalu's claims regarding Nibiru, they were outraged. Councillors interrogated one another. Anu was deposed in what way? What is the condition of his asylum? Did he really find gold? What if Alalu's mischief conveys the story rather than the truth? They sought the wisdom and counsel of the wise and knowledgeable. I was Alalu's master, said the oldest first. He was speaking. He had listened to the beginning's instructions and the celestial battle lessons he was learning. If he had gone beyond the hammered bracelet, he would have known of the aquatic monster Tiamat and her golden veins. His safe sanctuary is the 7th planet from Earth. Before the assembly, a prince addressed the subject, claiming to be Anu's son and the son of Anu's wife, Antu. Enlil's name means Lord of the Command. He was issuing warnings, Alalu is deafeningly silent when discussing circumstances. He wreaked havoc, losing the throne in a single wrestling match. If Tiamat's gold had been discovered, the proof was necessary. Would it be sufficient to protect our environment? How is it transported to Nibiru via the hammered bracelet? Enlil, Anu's son, spoke in this manner, and many other questions were asked. Even though many responses and proof were required, everyone agreed. Alalu had received the assembly's message, and he needed to respond. Alalu weighed the importance of his statements and chose to divulge his secrets. He recounted his voyage and its perils. He extracted the tester's crystal internal organs and the sampler's crystal heart. The crystals and other discoveries were then placed in the speaker for broadcast. "Declare me king and obey my orders now that the proof has been revealed," he made a strong demand. The sages were stunned. He demolished the bracelet with weapons of terror and unleashed even more havoc on Nibiru with Alalu. As Nibiru circles that region, tragedies accumulate in Alalu. The kingship to be changed was a serious matter, and there was much concern in the council. Anu was king not only because of his ancestors, but also because of fair warfare. Anu's son spoke in front of the assembled princes. He was one of the sages recognized for his all-encompassing wisdom. He was known as Enki, he whose home is water, and he was a master of the secrets of the waterways. He was Anu's firstborn and married Domkina, Alalu's daughter. "Anu the king is my biological father, but Ea claims Alalu is my stepfather. My fiancé's purpose was to bring the two clans together. Let me be the one to bring peace to this battle. Allow me to represent Anu to Alalu and defend Alalu's discoveries. Let me arrive on Earth in a chariot. I will dig a water-only path through the bracelet." According to the sage's assessment, Alalu should reign as Earth's monarch. Let there be a second wrestling bout, and if Nibiru can save, who will rule? Allow it to make a decision. Let me retrieve the valuable gold from Earth's rivers and return it to Nibiru. The prince's advisors, sages, and commanders were ready for the struggle they had discovered as they listened in amazement to Ea's words. "Allow it to happen. Allow Ea to travel and the gold to be examined," Anu stated. "I'll fight Alalu once more. May the victor reign as Nibiru's monarch." Alalu received the ruling's words. After thinking, he welcomed Ea, his son by marriage, to Earth. Collecting gold from the seas, put it to the test for Nibiru's salvation and decide whether Anu or I shall rule the second wrestling throne. Okay then, Anu presided over the gathering. Enlil protested, but the king's word was final. When he arrived at the chariot location, he sought the council of commanders and wise men. He considered the risks of the venture and the difficulties of mining and transporting the gold. He carefully analyzed Alalu's transmission and requested additional testing to obtain the necessary answers. He was making a tablet of destinies for himself. If water is the source of the force, whence can it be replenished? How will it be stored on the chariot, and how will it be converted into force? In meditations, a full circle of Nibiru and a Shah of Nibiru were finished. The mission's most massive heavenly chariot has been outfitted. A tablet of destiny has been firmly fixed, and the destiny of its circuit has been computed. 50 heroes are required for the journey to Earth to collect the riches. His approval was given for Anu's journey, and the stargazers were picked when the expedition was ready to begin. Many people flocked to the place of the chariots to bid farewell to the heroes and their leader. Did the soldiers enter the chariot one at a time, each wearing an eagle's helmet and carrying a fish suit? Ea was the last to depart the ship and say goodbye to the others. He bowed before his father Anu to win the king's blessing. "My firstborn, my son, you've come a long way, putting us all in danger. Please let Nibiru's catastrophe pass you by so you can safely return." Before saying his parting farewell, Anu blessed his son. Ninul, Ea's mother, embraced him from the bottom of her heart. "Why did you give him a restless heart after Anu gave me you as a son? Return safely across the perilous path," she spoke to him. Ea kissed Damkina, his wife, without saying anything. Enlil and his half-brother were holding hands. He wished him prosperity and good fortune. Now that the journey to the seventh planet has been narrated, the narrative of the fish god who rose from the sea may begin. Ea, the chariot, arrived with a heavy heart to carry out his orders. Anzu drove the chariot, not Ea, and Anzu sat in the commander's seat. His name meant "he who knows the heavens," and he was picked specifically for the position. He was a prince among princes, claiming royal ancestry. He skillfully steered the celestial chariot as it rose forcefully toward the distant sun, guided by Nibiru. Chariot traveled 10 leagues, 100 leagues, and 1,000 leagues. They were welcomed by little Gaga, who was also greeting the heroes. It gave blue-tinted guidance to the charming enchantress Antu. Anzu was drawn in by her appearance. "Let's explore her oceans," Anzu is speaking. "It's a world with no turning back," Ea said emphatically, continuing to talk without hesitating. The chariot continued its journey toward the solar system's third planet. His moon's entourage was twirling around him while Anu lay next to him. Water was evident in the tester's beams, indicating where Ea should stop if necessary. Ea proclaimed he would lead the way to Anshar, the highest prince of heaven, to continue the journey. They quickly became conscious of Anshar's magnetic pull, appreciating his ring of terror's various colors. Anzu, the chariot guide, deftly avoided the lethal threats. The massive Kishar was the second definite planet discovered. Her net had a strong pull, but Anzu the chariot reversed direction with incredible skill. Kishar thrusts in wrath at the flashes of the holy lightning chariot, her host thrusting at the unwanted. Kishar steadily retreated in preparation for the chariot, which was waiting beyond the fifth planet for the hammered bracelet. The water thruster was instructed to prepare so that his labor of love might begin to spin. The chariot was hurtling toward a swarm of whirling boulders, each one hurling itself at the chariot like a slingshot stone. When Ea gave the word, a water stream with the force of 1,000 heroes was launched. As they formed a path for the chariot, the boulders faced each other one by one. However, as one boulder fled, another attacked in its place. They were a veritable army, a host for Tiamat's vindictive splitting. Ea repeatedly told the water thruster to keep spinning, repeatedly directed streams of water at the swarm of stones, repeatedly made the boulders' faces alter, allowing the chariot to pass. The chariot could proceed without incident once the path was clear. The heroes let out a joyous yell, which was heightened by the emergence of the sun. Amid Anzu's excitement, the alert went off. For the way to having fashioned, excessive waters were eaten. Waters were insufficient to keep the chariot's flaming stones hydrated for the rest of the journey. They could see the sun's rays reflected in the sixth planet's profound darkness. He was asking for Anzu. Enki is assisting Lamu, who has water. Do you want to ride the clown chariot over there? Anzu, the chariot, maneuvered it deftly toward Lamu, reaching the celestial god and forming a circle around it. Anzu believes that the planet's attraction is too easy to handle, and that its network could be more robust. Lahmu was a sight to behold. It was multicolored with pure white stones and headgear. It had a reddish center surrounded by dazzling streams and lakes. The chariot, piloted by Anzu, paused traffic and plummeted alongside a lake. While wearing their eagle's helmets, Ea and Anzu strayed to the solid ground. At the command, the heroes that which water sucks expanded the chariot, filling its interior with lake water. While the chariot drank its fill of water, Ea and Anzu inspected the place. Tester and Sampler uncovered everything that mattered. The waters were okay to drink, but the air was insufficient. All of this was recorded in the chronicles of the chariot, and the cause for the diversion was explained. After regaining vigor, the chariot ascended to compassionate Lahmu's farewell salutation. Beyond, the seventh planet was circling. Earth and its companion, the chariot, were calling. In the commander's chair, Anzu and Ea remained mute. They were on their way to discovering whether Nibiru would offer them salvation or damnation. The chariot must be slowed, or it will perish in Earth's dense atmosphere, Anzu informed Ea. Make leisurely circles around the moon, Earth's friend, he was proposed to by Ea. They circled the moon, prostrate and scarred by the celestial battles destroyed Nibiru. As a result, the chariot slowed as it reached Anzu, the seventh planet. He drew the chariot in a circle twice the size of the Earth, and then gradually drew it closer to the firm land. The planet was 2/3 snow-colored with a black center. They could see the firm lands and oceans while looking for the signal beacon from Alalu. Alalu's signal was sent whenever an ocean met the dry ground, and the wetlands absorbed 4 rivers. Because it was so vast and heavy, the chariot belongs in the marshes, Anzu made a remark. Because the Earth's tugging net is too strong, the dry ground cannot descend, Anzu informed Ea. Splash down, splash into the waves of the ocean, Ea to Anzu screamed. Anzu drove his chariot around the Earth one more time before carefully lowering it to the water's edge. The chariot's lungs expanded as air entered them. It splashed into the water below, but did not sink. A voice from the speaker said, "Welcome to Earth." Alalu took the floor. His beaming statements pointed in the direction of his whereabouts. The chariot was moving through the river in the direction Anzu the chariot indicated. Soon, the vast sea began to close in, and dry ground appeared on both sides as a protector. On the suitable highlands, brown-hued hills rose to the left, their heads pointed to heaven. The chariot, floating like a ship on the waters, made its way to Alalu's place. The marshes ahead were replaced by the oceans as the dry land was swamped. In response to the hero's orders, Anzu ordered their fish suits. The heroes entered the marshes via the chariot's hatch. Strong ropes were connected to the chariot and used to pull it. Alalu's beaming statements became more powerful. "Hurry, hurry," this is what he stated. At the marsh's edge there was a sight to behold. Alalu's sacred vessel, Nibiru, was riding in a chariot that gleamed in the sunlight. The hero accelerated his movement toward Alalu's chariot. They accelerated. Ea put on his fish suit out of impatience. His chest felt like it was pounding like a drum. He jumped into the swamp and dashed toward the edge. The bottom was more profound than he expected, and the marshes flooded to vast heights. He changed his pace to that of a swimmer, propelling himself ahead with powerful strokes. He could see verdant pastures as he approached dry land. He rose up and began walking once his feet touched solid ground. Alalu stood in front of him, throwing his hands wildly. Ea emerged from the sea and stood on the dark surface of the earth. Alalu dashed in his direction and embraced his son through marriage tightly. "Welcome to a new world," Alalu spoke to Ea. This describes how Eridu came to be on Earth and how the 7-day count began. Alalu, Ea held hands in silence, his eyes welling up with ecstasy tears. Ea bowed in front of him in respect for his father, whom he had married. The heroes were making their way through the marshes, while others were running toward the dry ground while clothed in fish suits. "Don't let the chariot go down. Avoid the dirt ahead by anchoring it in the water." Anzu was in command. The heroes landed in front of Alalu. They were working on bows. Anzu, the last chariot to leave, arrived. He bowed before Alalu and the two exchanged greetings. All visitors were greeted warmly by Alalu. Everyone in the room heard Ea's instruction. "I am Earth's commander," this is what he stated. "We have arrived on a life-or-death mission. Nibiru's future is in our hands." He looked about for a probable spot for his planned encampment. "There are mounds in the soil." Ea issued the order to set up a camp. He was pointing to a nearby reed hut home erected by Alalu. "To the king, my father, Anu, herald your triumphant arrival," he said to Nibiru before saying to Anzu. As it turned, the hue of the heavens changed from dazzling to scarlet. They were watching something unprecedented. The sun was disappearing like a red ball on the horizon. Fear incapacitated the heroes of the great calamity. They were terrified. "A lowering of the sun. It is indicating the end of one day on Earth," Alalu says as he laughs. "Lay down for a quick snooze. A night on Earth is short. The sun will appear before you know it, and it will be morning on Earth." The heavens and the earth separated as darkness descended abruptly. Lightning strikes pierced the darkness, and it rained and thundered. Winds like storms from an otherworldly god blew across the ocean. Within the chariot, the heroes assembled. They were upset since they had not gotten any sleep. With bated breath, we awaited the return of the sun. When its rays appeared, they giggled and slapped each other on the back. Their first day on Earth included both an evening and a morning. By daylight, Ea had already considered the occurrences. He was considering how to divide the oceans. Engur fashioned the master from the beautiful waters to provide drinking water. He walked to the snake pond with Alalu, thinking about its warm waters. Nasty snakes were spreading in the pond. Engur informed Ea of this. Ea then reflected on a large amount of rainfall he had collected in the marshlands. He named the reed thicket he was directing and delegated wetland maintenance to Enbilulu. Enkidu, who was in charge of the ditch and dike, constructed a boundary so that the marshes could create a collection area for the rainwater. As a result, marsh waters and pleasant waters were separated from the waters above and below. The second day on Earth occurred between the hours of dusk and dawn. As soon as sundawn was declared, the hero accomplished the chores assigned to him. Alalu Ea's steps were aimed toward the grass and trees area. Herbs and fruits of various kinds grow on everything in the orchard. Ea posed the following inquiries to his vizier Isimud. What exactly is this plant? What exactly is that plant? He was curious. Isimud, a learned man, could tell what food grew well. He ripped a fruit from a honey plant for Ea. In his remarks to Ea, he ate one fruit and Ea ate one fruit. The hero, the guru, is given power over the food that grows due to his excellent reputation. As a result, the hero was given drink and nourishment, but he was unsatisfied. The third day on Earth occurred between the hours of dusk and dawn. The winds died down on the fourth day, and the waves had no effect on the chariot. Allowing the chariot's tools to be brought, and the encampment's dwellings to be built. This was given by Ea. In charge of mold and brickmaking, Kula assigned Ea to make clay bricks and give Mushdamu the order to build foundations and dwellings. The sun shone all day brightly, generating the day's brightness. By sunset, Kingu, one of the heavenly gods, was supposed to represent the Earth's moon, which casts a pale light on Earth and a lesser light to rule the night when it is complete. It was the fourth day on Earth, late at night and early in the morning. On the sixth day, Ea Ningisi gave the order to build a reed boat. It is critical to assess the extent of the swamplands and the distance between the marshes. Ulmarsh, the one who knows what swarms in the oceans and who amid the birds that soar. Enki relied on Ulmarsh to help him distinguish between good and evil. The Ulmarsh were unaware of many creatures that swam in the oceans and take flight in the air. Their sheer numbers were astounding. The carp were large and swimming among the undesirables. Ea summoned Enbilulu, master of the marshlands, Enkimdu, commander of the ditch and dike. He spoke to them in the marshlands to build a barrier. Catching fish with the help of canebrakes and green reeds, a trap for carp that could not escape from a net was set up there. No bird suitable for consumption could escape from its net. For the heroes given, fish and poultry were separated into gorgeous varieties. It was now the morning after the sixth day on Earth had ended. On the sixth day, each of the orchard's creatures began keeping score. Enuosag to his task of distinguishing between what creeps and what walks on foot. Their personalities left Enuosag stunned, and he told Ea about the ferocity of their wildness. Mushdamu was summoned by Ea Kula, who issued the following urgent orders. The houses will be completed by the evening, and a fence will surround them for security. The warriors who took up the assignments quickly laid bricks on the foundations. The roofing was made of reeds, while the fencing was made of felled trees. A beam that kills from the chariot carried over a speaker that words beams to the house he made for Ea, Anzu. Everything Ea, Alalu and Anzu did was positive in light of their acts. The camp was completed by the evening. The heroes gathered for the evening. The sixth day has nighttime and morning hours. On the seventh day, the heroes of the encampment gathered. They overheard Ea declare to them, "We have taken a risky, dangerous road from Nibiru to the seventh planet. We landed on Earth, did much good, and established an encampment. Today should be a day of relaxation, and the seventh day should always be a day of rest. The phrase Eridu should now be replaced with home in the far away, which means the same thing. To fulfill a vow, declare Alalu of Eridu as commander." The assembled heroes roared their approval in unison. Before paying respect to Ea, Alalu said the following words of agreement. "Give Ea a new nickname, Nudimud, the artful fashioner." The hero all nodded in agreement. The seventh day has nighttime and morning hours. This is the narrative of how the gold search began, and how Nibiru's plans to save itself fell miserably. After Eridu's tent had been erected and the heroes had eaten enough to satisfy them, Ea gold was gathered from the canals. The chariot's firestones were stirred, as was its great cracker. With that which water sucks from the chariot expanded, it was immersed in marsh waters. Water was directed into a crystal jar. The water draws out all the metal in the jar, including the crystals. The water was then spat out of the vessel and into the fish pond, where the metals in the water were collected. Ea was a talented tailor, and his creations were fantastic. Marsh waters were pulled in and spewed for 6 days on Earth as metals accumulated inside the vessel. Ea and Alalu studied the metals on the seventh day. The metals in the jar varied. There was plenty of copper and iron, but gold was scarce. In the chariot was another vessel, another work of art by Nudimmud. After being split into numerous categories, the metals were delivered ashore one by one. As a result, the heroes must work for 6 days straight before taking a day off. Over 6 days, the crystal bowls were filled and emptied. On the 7th day, metals were counted. There were also copper, iron, and other metals, and the gold was collected in the most miniature mound. During the night, the moon waxed and waned. The month made its circuit call. It declared the 7th day, a day of rest, by its half-crown when the month began, as its 6 days of sparkling horns signified. The moon was seen halfway through its fullness. After that, it shrank. The moon's orbit aligned with the sun's path, revealing the Earth's face. The moon's motions captivated Ea, Ki's attachment to Kingu. He pondered, what was the purpose of the attachment, and what divine sign did it convey? Month referred to Ea as the moon's circuit, and Month named its circuit. The rivers separated in the chariot for a month and 2 months. The sun gave Earth a new season every 6 months. Ea named winter and summer. Winter and summer existed. By the year of Earth, Ea had completed the circuit. By the end of the year, the accumulated gold account had been taken. There should have been more to send to Nibiru. The swampland's waters were insufficient. Transport the chariot to the more bottomless, unfathomable sea. Ea had already stated this. The chariot was unmoored and returned to its original place. The salt water was circulated through the stirred-up crystal jars with care. Metals were classified into numerous categories, and gold shone brightly among them. Ea received word of the events from the chariot and sent it to Nibiru, where Anu was overjoyed. Nibiru was on its way to the sun's dwelling and was getting closer to Earth on its Shah circuit. Anu inquired eagerly about the gold. Was he asking, have enough arrived to send to Nibiru? Unfortunately, more of the gold from the waters was needed. Let another Shah go by and double the amount. Ea gave advice to Anu. Obtaining gold from the ocean's waters continued. Enki felt apprehension filling his heart. Parts were hauled from the chariot and a sky chamber was assembled. Abgal, he who knows the pilot of the sky chamber to take charge, he appointed. Daily in the sky chamber with Abgal did Ea upward soar, the earth and its secrets to learn. For the sky chamber an enclosure was constructed. By Alalu's chariot was it placed. Daily the crystals in Alalu's chariot did Ea study. What by their beams was discovered to understand. Whence does the gold come? He asked Alalu. Where on earth are Tiamat's golden veins? In the sky chamber with Abgal did Ea upward soar, the earth and its secrets to learn. Over majestic mountains they roamed. In the valley's great rivers they saw steppes and forests below were stretched, and thousands of leagues were within reach. Vast lands separated by oceans they recorded. With the beam that scans the soils they penetrated. On Nibiru impatience was growing. Was the outcry increasing? Can gold protection provide? Assemble the gold. On Nibiru's bearing gold you must deliver. So did Anu Ea's command. Repair Alalu's chariot for returning to Nibiru, make it fit, and prepare it for the Shah's completion. So was Anu saying. Ea, his father's, the king's words were heeding. He contemplated repairing Alalu's chariot. As the sky chamber won eve by the side of the chariot, they landed. With Abgal the chariot, they entered a secret deed in the darkness to perform. The weapons of terror, the 7 of them, from the chariot they removed. To the sky chamber they took them inside the sky chamber to give them hiding. By sunrise, Ea with Abgal in the sky chamber soared to another land was their direction. There, in a secret place, did Ea the weapons hide. In a cave, a place unknown, he stored them. Then to Anzu Ea words of command gave. To repair Alalu's chariot he directed, for returning to Nibiru to make it fit, by the Shah's completion to make it ready. Anzu, in the ways of chariot, is exceptionally skilled in the task his labors set. He made its thrusters hum again, its tablets he contemplated. The absence of the weapons of terror he soon discovered. With anger, Anzu cried out. Ea of their hiding away explained. Forsworn is the weapon's use, Ea was saying. Neither in the heavens nor on firm lands shall they ever be harnessed. Without them, no passage through the hammered bracelet is safe. Without them, without water thrusters, the danger is endurance surpassing. Anzu is speaking. Alalu of Eridu, the commander, the words of Ea considered. To the words of Anzu heed he gave. The words of Ea by the council of Nibiru are attested, Alalu was saying. But without the chariot's return, Nibiru shall be doomed. Abgal, who knows to pilot boldly toward the leaders, stepped forward. I shall be the pilot. The dangers I shall valiantly face, he was speaking. Thus was the decision made. Abgal shall be the pilot, and Anzu on earth shall stay. On Nibiru, the stargazers, the destinies of the celestial gods contemplated, an opportune day they were selecting. Into Alalu's chariot basketfuls of gold were carried. The forepart of the chariot Abgal entered, the commander's seat he occupied. From the chariot of Enki to him Enki's tablet of destiny gave. Shall be that which shows the way for you. By the opened pathway you shall find. The chariot's firestones Abgal stirred up. Their hum-like music was enthralling. He enlivened the chariot's great cracker, a reddish brilliance it was casting. Enki and Alalu, the multitude of heroes, were standing around saying farewell to him. They were bidding. Then the chariot with a roar heavenward rose, to the heavens it ascended. To Nibiru words of the ascent were beamed. There was much expected of Nibiru. Synopsis of the fourth tablet. The Nibirians hail even the small gold delivery tests of gold's use as an atmospheric shield succeed. Additional heroes and new equipment are sent to Earth. Gold extraction from the water continue to disappoint. Ea discovers gold sources that need deep mining in the Abzu. Enlil, then Anu, comes to Earth for crucial decisions. As the half-quarrel brothers' lots decide the tasks, Ea, renamed Enki, Earth's master, goes to the Abzu. Enlil stays to develop permanent facilities in the Edid. As Anu prepares to lease, he is attacked by Alalu. The seven who judge sentence Alalu to exile on Lamu. Anu's daughter Ninma, a medical officer, is sent to Earth. Stopping off at Lamu, Mars, she finds Alalu dead. A rock carved to resemble Alalu's face serves as his tomb. Anzu is given command of a way station on Lamu. Reverse side, partly damaged, Morhen Collection Assyrian Tablet, Mosul MC1265M. To Nibiru words of the ascent were beamed. There was much expected of Nibiru. With confidence, Abgal, the chariot guiding. Around Kingu, the moon, he made a circuit by its net power's speed to gain. 1,000 leagues, 10,000 leagues toward Lamu he journeyed. Through its net power, a direction toward Nibiru to obtain. Beyond Lamu, the hammered bracelet was whirling. Deftly did Abgal Ea's crystals make a glow, the opened paths to locate. The eve of fate upon him with favor looked. Beyond the bracelet, the chariot beamed signals from Nibiru, receiving, homeward, homeward was the direction. Ahead, in the darkness, a reddish hue glowed Nibiru. a sight to behold. By the beamed signals, the chariot was now directed. Thrice around Nibiru it made circuits, by its net force to be slowed. Nearing the planet, the breach in its atmosphere Abgal could see. He felt a squeezing in his heart of the gold he was bringing. What was he thinking? Passing through the atmosphere's thickness, aglow was the chariot, its heat overbearing. Deftly did Abgal spread the chariot's wings, its descent arresting. Beyond lay the place of the chariots, a sight most inviting. Gently did Abgal the chariot bring down to a place by the beams selected. He opened the hatch. A multitude of the populace was there assembled. Anu toward him stepped forward, locked arms, warm greetings uttered. Heroes into the chariot rushed, the gold-bearing baskets they brought out. High above their heads the baskets held. To the assembled words of victory Anu shouted. "Salvation is here," to them he was saying. To the palace was Abgal accompanied to rest and tell all. He was escorted. The gold, a sight most dazzling by the savants, was quickly taken. To make of it the finest dust, to skyward launch, it was hauled away. A shah did the fashioning last, and a shah did the testing continue. With rockets was the dust heavenward carried. By crystal's beams was it dispersed. Where there was a breach, now there was a healing. Joy the palace filled, and abundance in the land was expected. To earth Anu's good words were beaming. Gold gives salvation. The obtaining of gold continues. When Nibiru near the sun came, the golden dust was by its rays disturbed. The healing in the atmosphere dwindled, and the breach to bigness returned. Anu, the return of Abgal to earth, then commanded. In the chariot more heroes travelled. In its bowels more that which the water sucks in and thrusts out were provided. With them Nungal to travel was commanded, a pilot helper to Abgal to become. Great joy there was when Abgal to Eridu returned. Many greetings and the locking of arms there. The new water workings Ea with care contemplated. There was smiling on his face. In his heart there was a squeezing. By Shah's time, Nungal in the chariot was to depart ready. The chariot had only a few baskets of gold in its bowels. The disappointment in Nibiru Ea's heart to him was predicted. Enki with Alalu words exchanged. That which was known they reconsidered. If Earth, the head of Tiamat, was in the celestial battle cut off, where was the neck? Where were the golden veins cut asunder? Where were the golden veins from Earth's innards protruding? In the sky chamber, Enki over mountains and valleys travelled. The lands by oceans separated, him with the scanner examined. Again and again there was the same sign. Where dry land from dry land apart was torn, Earth's innards were revealed. Where the landmass was the shape of a heart was given, in the lower part thereof, golden veins from Earth's innards were abundant. Abzu, of gold the birthplace, Ea to the region the name gave. Ea then to Anu words of wisdom beamed. With gold earth is filled. The gold must be gotten from the veins, not the waters. From earth's bowels, not from its waters, must the gold be obtained. From a region beyond the ocean, Abzu, it shall be called, can an abundance of gold be gotten. In the palace there was great astonishment. Savants and counselors to Ea's words gave consideration. That gold must be obtained. On that unanimity there was. How to obtain it from the bowels of the earth, of that there was much discussed. In the assembly a prince spoke up. Enlil was the half-brother of Ea. First Alalu, then his son by marriage, Ea, upon waters placed all hope. Of salvation by waters gold they were reassuring. Shah after Shah, all of us salvation were expecting. Now different words we are hearing, a task beyond imagining to undertake. Proof of the golden veins is needed, and a plan for success must be ensured. So was Enlil to the assembly saying. To his words many in agreement listened. Let Enlil go to earth, Anu was saying. Let him proof obtain, a plan put forward. His words shall be heeded, his words a command shall be. In unanimity the assembly consented, and Enlil's mission was approved. With Alalgar, his chief lieutenant, Enlil for earth departed. Alalgar, his pilot, was. With each a sky chamber the two of them provided. To earth, Anu the king, and words of decisions were beamed. Enlil of the mission in command shall be, his words shall be the command. When Enlil on earth arrives, Ea and his half-brother warmly lock arms. As brother meets brother, Ea Enlil is welcomed. To Alalu, Enlil made a bowing. Alalu with weak words bade welcome. The heroes, to Enlil's words of warm welcome, were shouting at the commander much as they were expecting. Deftly Enlil the sky chambers to be assembled did command. In a sky chamber he went soaring. Alalgar, his chief lieutenant, was the pilot with him. Enki in a sky chamber by Abgal piloted to them to the Abzu showed the way. They surveyed the dry lands of the oceans, they took careful notice. From the upper sea to the lower sea, the lands they scanned. All above and below they took account. In the Abzu the soil they tested. Gold there was true, with much soil and rocks it was co-mixed. Refined as in the waters it was not. In an admixture it was hiding. They went back to Endu. What they had found they contemplated. Eridu new tasks must be given. Alone on earth it cannot continue. Thus was Enlil saying. A grand plan he described, a comprehensive mission he was proposing. More heroes to bring over, more settlements to establish. The gold from Earth's innards to obtain, and the gold from the admixture to separate, by skyships and chariots to be carried from landing places for tasks to perform. Who of the settlements in charge will be, and who of the Abzu shall take command? Thus was Ea of Enlil asking. Who of enlarged Eridu shall take command, and who the settlements shall oversee? Thus was Alalu saying. Who of the skyships and the landing place shall take command? So did Anzu inquire. Let Anu come to earth, let him decisions provide. Thus did Enlil say in answer. Now, this is the account of how Anu went to earth came. How lots with Enki and Enlil were drawn, how Enki, the title name Enki, was given, how Alalu for the second time with Anu wrestled. To earth in a celestial chariot made Anu's journey, the route by the planets it followed. Around Lamu, Nungal the pilot a circuit made, by Anu was studied. They circled and admired the moon, who Kingu once had been. Perchance gold thereon can also be found. In his heart, Anu wondered. In the waters beside the marshlands, his chariot splashed down. Enki, for the arrival, reed boats prepared for Anu to arrive by sailing. Above the sky, chambers were hovering, a royal welcome they were offering. In the lead boat, Enki was afloat, the king, his father, the first to be greeting. Before Anu he bowed, then Anu embraced him. My son, my firstborn, Anu to him shouted. In the square of Eridu, in rows the heroes, their king to earth royally to welcome. In front of them stood Enlil, their commander. Before Anu the king he bowed. Anu him to his chest embraced. Alalu too was there standing. Of what to do he was uncertain. Anu to him a greeting extended. Let us lock arms as comrades, to Alalu he said. With hesitation, Alalu stepped forward with Anu. He locked arms. A meal for Anu was prepared. By eve-time, a reed hut for him by Enki was built. Anu retired. The next day, the 7th by the count begun by Enki, was a day of resting. A day of backslapping and celebrating it was, as befits a king's coming. On the day that followed, Enki and Enlil before Anu the findings presented. What was done and what was needed with him they discussed. "Let me see the lands by myself," Anu to them was saying. Aloft they all in the sky chambers went, lands from sea to sea they observed. To the Abzu they flew, and on its gold-hiding soil they landed. "Complex will the gold's extraction be," Anu was saying. "To obtain the gold it is necessary, no matter how deep the gold is below the surface, it must be gotten. Let Enki and Enlil tools for the purpose devise. Let them heroes for the task assigned. Let them find how gold from soil and rock separates, how Nibiru is pure gold to deliver. Let a landing place be built, and let more heroes to the tasks on earth be assigned." So was Anu to the two sons, saying, in his heart, of way stations in the heavens he was thinking. Those were the command words of Anu. Enki and Enlil, in agreement, their heads were bowing. There were evenings and mornings. To Eridu they all returned. In Eridu they held council, tasks and duties to assign. Enki, who Eridu established, was the first to speak up. "Eridu have I established. Let other settlements in this region be set up. Let the Edin be, abode of the upright ones, by this name be known. The commander of the Edin let me be. Let Enlil the gold extraction perform." By these words Enlil was angered. "The plan is wrongful," to Anu he said. "Of commanding and tasks to perform, I am the better. Of skyships I have the knowledge. Of the earth and its secrets, my half-brother Enki is the knower. The Abzu he discovered. Let him of the Abzu be the master." Anu listened to the angry words with a careful ear. The brothers were again half-brothers. The firstborn with the legal heir, with words as weapons, were contending. Enki was the firstborn son of a concubine to Anu. He was born. Enlil, after that born by Antu, Anu's spouse, was conceived. A half-sister of Anu, she was Enlil, the legal heir making the next-born son for the succession the firstborn overcoming. A conflict that the obtainment of gold would endanger Anu was fearing. One brother to Nibiru must return. The succession from considering must now be removed. So was Anu to himself thinking. Aloud to the two a startling suggestion he made. Who to Nibiru for the throne seat shall return? Who the Edin shall command? Who in the Abzu shall be the master? Let us three, I wish you, by lots determined. Silent were the brothers. The audacious words by surprise them overtook. Let us draw lots, Anu said. By the hand of fate, let there be a decision. The three, father and two sons, clasped their hands together. They cast lots, and by the lots, the tasks they divided. Anu to Nibiru to return, its ruler on the throne to remain. The Edin to Enlil was allotted to be the lord of the command as his name showed. More settlements to establish, of the skyships and their heroes charge to take. Of all the lands until the bar of the seas encounter, the leader is to be. To Enki, the seas and the oceans as his command were granted. Lands beyond the bar of the waters by him to be governed. In the Abzu, to be the master, with ingenuity, the gold to procure. Enlil with the lots was agreeable. The hand of fate he, with a bow, accepted. Enki's eyes filled with tears of Eridu and Edin. He wished not to be parted. Let Enki forever Eridu as his home keep, Anu to Enlil was saying. Let his being the first to splash down forever be remembered. Let Ea as Enkiith's master be known. Enki, Enkiith's master, let his title be. His father's words Enlil with a bow accepted. To his brother he thus said, Enki, Earth's master, your title name shall henceforth be. I, Lord of the Command, shall be known. The decisions were announced to the heroes in the assembly, Anu, Enki, and Enlil. The tasks are assigned, and success is in the offing, Anu to them was saying. Now I can bid you farewell, to Nibiru with a quiet heart I can return. Forward toward Anu Alalu stepped. A grave matter has been forgotten, he shouted. The mastery of earth to me was allotted. That was the promise when the gold finds to Nibiru I announced. Nor have I the claim to Nibiru's throne forsaken. By Anu to share all with his sons, it is a grave abomination. Thus did Alalu, Anu, and the decision challenge. Without words was Anu in the beginning. Then with anger he spoke up. By second wrestling let our dispute be decided. Let us do the wrestling here. Let us do it now. With disdain Alalu took off his clothing. Likewise did Anu unrobe. In nakedness did the two royals grapple, a mighty struggle. Alalu bent his knee, and to the ground Alalu fell. Anu on the chest of Alalu with his foot pressed down, victory in the wrestling declaring. By wrestling the decision was made. I am the king. To Nibiru Alalu shall not return. So was Anu saying as he removed his foot from the fallen Alalu. Up as lightning Alalu from the ground arose. By the legs Anu pulled down. His mouth was wide open, and swiftly he, the malehood of Anu, bit off. The malehood of Anu did Alalu swallow. In pained agony did Anu cry to the heavens shout. To the ground, wounded, he fell. Enki to the fallen Anu rushed. Enlil the laughing, Alalu captive held. Heroes Anu to his but carried. Words of accusation against Alalu he uttered. Let justice be done. With your beam weapon, let Alalu be killed, Enlil to his lieutenant shouted. No, no, Enki fiercely shouted. Justice is within him. In his innards poison has entered. They took Alalu to a reed hut, his hands and feet as a prisoner bound. Now this is the account of the judging of Alalu, and of the happenings after that on earth and on Lamu. In his reed hut, Anu was hurting. In the reed hut to him Enki applied the healing. In his reed hut Alalu was sitting. Spittle he spat from his mouth. In his innards the malehood of Anu was like a burden. With Anu's semen were his innards impregnated. Like a female in travail, his belly grew swollen. On the third day Anu's pains subsided. His pride significantly hurt. To Nibiru I wish to return, to his two sons did Anu say. Beforehand, upon Alalu there must be a judgment. A sentence the crime befitting must be imposed. By the laws of Nibiru 7 judges were required, the highest rank of them to preside. In the Eridu square the heroes assembled, the trial of Alalu to observe. 7 seats were provided for the 7 who judge. For Anu presiding, the tallest seat was prepared. To his right Enki was seated. Enlil was seated on Anu's left. On Enki's right, Anzu and Nungal were seated. Abgal and Alalgar to the left of Enlil sat. Before these 7 who judge Alalu was brought. His hands and feet were untied. Enlil was first to speak. In fairness, a wrestling match was held, and Alalu, the kingship to Anu, forfeited. What say you, Alalu? Enki him this question asked. In fairness, the wrestling match was held, and I lost the kingship, Alalu said. Having been vanquished, Alalu, an abominable crime performed. The malehood of Anu he bit and swallowed. Thus did Enlil the accusation of the crime make. Death is the punishment, Enlil was saying. "What say you, Alalu?" Enki, his father by marriage, asked. There was silence. Alalu the question did not answer. "We all the crime did witness," Alalgar was saying. "Judgment must be in accordance. If words you wish to utter, speak before the judging," Enki to Alalu said. In the silence, Alalu slowly spoke. "On Nibiru I was king, by right of succession I was reigning. Anu was my cupbearer. The princes he aroused, to a wrestling he me challenged. For 9 counted circuits I was king on Nibiru, to my seed kingship was belonging. On my throne seat Anu himself sat. To escape death to distant earth I made a dangerous journey. Salvation for Nibiru I, Alalu, on the alien planet discovered. Return to Nibiru I was promised, in fairness the throne to regain. Then to earth came Enki, the one by compromise the next to reign Nibiru he was designated. Then came Enlil, the succession from Anu to himself claiming. Then Anu came, and by lots he tricked Enki. Enki, the lord of earth, was proclaimed, of earth, not of Nibiru, to be the master. Then to Enlil the command was granted, and Enki to the distant Abzu was delegated. My heart of all that was aching, my chest from shame and anger was bursting. Then Anu his foot upon my chest placed, upon my aching heart he was treading. In the silence Anu spoke up. By royal seed and law, by fair wrestling did I gain the throne. My malehood you bit off and swallowed, my offspring line to discontinue. Enlil spoke up. To the crime the accused admitted, let the judgment come, let death the punishment be. Death, said Alalgar. Death, said Abgal. Death, said Nungal. Death to Alalu by itself will come. What he had swallowed in his innards death will bring, Enki was saying. Let Alalu be in prison for the rest of his days on earth. Anzu is speaking. Their words Anu was contemplating. Anger and pity both he engulfed. To die in exile, let this be the judgment, Anu was saying. In amazement, the judges at each other glanced. What Anu was saying, they wondered. Neither on earth nor on Nibiru shall the exiling be, Anu was saying. On the way there is the Lamu planet, with waters and an atmosphere it is endowed. Enki, as Enki thereon made a pause. Of it as a way station have I been thinking. Its net force is less than Earth's forceful, an advantage in wisdom to be considered. In the celestial chariot Alalu shall be taken. On my departing from Earth, he with me shall make the journey. Around the planet Lamu we shall make circuits. To Alalu a sky chamber we shall provide. To the planet Lamu, in it he will be descended. Alone on a strange planet, an exile he shall be, his days to his last day by himself to count. Thus did Anu's words of judgment utter, in solemnity were the words intended. By unanimity was this judgment upon Alalu imposed. In the presence of the heroes it was announced. Let Nungal be my pilot to Nibiru. From that place, chariots bearing heroes again to earth to pilot. Take charge, so did Anu's commandments utter. Let Anzu join us for the journey of the descent to Lamu. On the morrow departing was readied. All who depart by boats to the chariot were ferried. A place for landings on firm soil you must prepare, Anu to Enlil was saving. How Lamu is a way station to use, plans you should make. Farewells there were, both joy and sorrow. Limping did Anu on the chariot embark, and with his hands tied did Alalu the chariot entered. Then the chariot soared to the heavens, and the royal visit ended. They around the moon made a circuit. Anu was enchanted by sight. Toward red-hued Lamu they journeyed. Twice about it they circled. Lower toward the strange planet they came. Mountains sky high, and tears on the surface they noticed. They observed where Enki's chariot had once landed. By a lakeside it was located. Slowed by Lahmu net power, they readied in the chariot the sky chamber. Anzu, its pilot, then unexpected words to Anu. With Alalu to the firm soil of Lahmu I shall descend. With the sky chamber to the chariot to return I wish not. I shall stay with Alalu on this strange planet. Until he dies I shall protect him. When he dies of his innards poison, as befits a king, him I shall bury. I shall have made my name. Anzu, they will say, against all odds, to a king in exile a companion was. He saw things by others unseen. On a strange planet he faced strange things. Anzu, they will to the end of time shall say, as a hero has fallen. There were tears in the eyes of Alalu and amazement in the heart of Anu. Your wish shall be honored, Anzu, Anu said. At this moment, let a promise by me to you be made. By my raised hand to you, I this swear. On the next journey, a chariot by Lahmu shall circuit. Its skyship to you shall descend. If alive it shall find you, the master of Lahmu, you shall be proclaimed. Anzu bowed his head. When a way station on Lahmu shall be established, its commander you shall be. Okay then, to Anu he said. Into the sky chamber Alalu and Anzu were ushered. Eagles' helmets and fish suits provided them with food and tools. From the circling chariot the skyship departed. Its descent was observed from the chariot. Then from view it disappeared, and the chariot to Nibiru continued. For 9 Shahs was Alalu king on Nibiru. For 8 Shahs Eridu he commanded. In the 9th Shah, to die in exile on Lahmu was his fate. Now, this is the account of the return of Anu to Nibiru, and how Alalu on Lahmu was buried, how Enlil on earth the landing place built. On Nibiru there was for Anu a joyous welcome. Of what had happened to the council and the princes Anu gave account. Neither pity nor vengeance from them all he sought. To discuss the tasks ahead they all instructed.